Hello everyone, and welcome to the Final Fantasy series relay number 9. This is the pre-show, preluding the event on Friday. The time will be in the corner in a second, the start times. The start time in the UK will be 2 p.m, I believe, on Friday. But today is just a pre-show. We're going to be talking about all the different Final Fantasy games that are coming up in the relay. We're going to be talking to one runner from each of the games. This year we have 18 games in the relay. So yeah, we're going to be talking to the runners. We're going to talk about what's cool about the game, what's hard about the game, what sort of segments to look after, explain the kind of mechanics. So the idea is, when you watch the event on Friday, you'll know a little bit about these games and what to look forward to, and have a bit more of an understanding of what's on screen, what you're watching. The relay itself, if you're not familiar, is a race with 3 teams. Each team is unique, has 18 runners, and it's essentially just the first to beat all 18 games. They'll be played in the same order for each team. This year we'll be starting with Final Fantasy XV, and then playing through a kind of random order, essentially, up to Final Fantasy V will be the final game on Monday night, or Tuesday morning, perhaps, depending on where you are. So it's expected to be around 80 hours. Before we get started, I just want to quickly give some thanks to the RPG Limit Break staff for once again letting us use the RPGLB channel and for moderating the chat and everything. And I also want to give a quick thanks to Shadowkiller, who moved their event for us, which was going to be next weekend. But we asked very kindly if we could have the relay on that weekend, and they moved for us, which is very nice. So thank you very much. And I'm going to hand it over now to Christinarium, who's going to be the host for the evening, and who's going to be doing all sorts of interviews and stuff with various guests. I believe we're talking about Final Fantasy II first. Take it away.
Hello, everyone. Wow. Seraph made that playlist during the intro. Wasn't it just full of bangers? Just non-stop jamming. As a result, I am now half human, half sweat, because of the sheer amount of dancing I had to do throughout that. Hello, everybody. My name is Chrysisiphus Davro the Ninth, otherwise known as Christinarium. I will be your host today. And we have 18 runners, as Seraph mentioned, to take us through today. Starting with FF2. So we should probably take it away. Start now. One Mr. Zwanzig should be here with me. Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you doing this evening?
Pretty well. I mean, I do apologize slightly if I might cough a little bit. I've had a bit of a persistent cough for the past week, but should be fine mostly.
I'm sure it'll be fine. So, during the pre-show, one of the main reasons we do it, we get to do team reveals. So, for FF2, the teams are Mr. Zwanzig himself on Team Mog, Possa on Team Choco, and Rupan leads out Team Tonbury. Do you have any special feeling or sentiment towards being on any team, Zwanzig?
Not particularly. I mean, I've been doing these relays long enough. I've been on every team. I think I've won with every team. So, yeah, all good by me.
Okay, fantastic. So, you're here to speak about FF2. You're somewhat different this relay in the sense that you learnt FF2 specifically for the relay. How would you describe FF2's run and having learnt it?
Relatively simple, although perhaps not quite as simple as I thought it would be going into it. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just kind of learning the movement and hoping you run away from random encounters, but there are some subtleties, especially in the early game. It's a lot of RNG. I mean, I'll be completely candid and say it's not my favorite speedrun I've ever learned. I mostly did it to, help out with the relay, but it's not. It's okay. It's fine.
It's okay, it's fine. You know what? We'll take any amount of enthusiasm we can get. FF2's leveling system is like fairly unique. You don't really see it in, I'm pretty sure, like any other game really other than FF2. Can you take me through the leveling system, how that works?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I could go on about it for a very long time if I wanted to go into all the details, but I guess I'll just hit the points that are actually relevant to the speedrun. I mean, the basic idea is use thing levels up. And the main factor where that's important for us that we need to pay attention to is leveling up our attack skill with either swords or bare hands. We're mostly going to be leveling up one character a lot in bare hands and one a lot in swords. And the barehanded brawling is mostly for just straight damage. It scales very well with leveling it up. Whereas with swords, it's actually mostly just so that they do more swings. And while that could make you do more damage, the sword user is going to be mostly equipping swords that do status effects, and getting extra hits with those will let you have higher chance of inflicting those statuses. And so the way in which we level it up is kind of interesting, where there's a formula that takes into account your current level in the skill, to where it's harder to level up if you're already at a higher level. The number of times you use the skill, so with attacking, it's just attacking with that weapon type, and then the rank that the enemies are. Every encounter will have a set rank depending on the enemies that are in it. So like early on in the game, very start of the game, we can just do one attack in an encounter and we'll get experience. Once we rank up to rank 2, we suddenly need to do 2 attacks to gain any experience whatsoever. It's not like it goes down a bit. No, you just get nothing if you don't do enough attacks. And so this becomes this kind of dance of trying to optimize when you get into an encounter. Like, okay, there's this many enemies, so I can do this many attacks before all the enemies are dead. Then I'll do it with these characters, and then they'll get experience. And there's some pretty quick decision making you need to do with this, and it's compounded by the fact that FF2, since we're running the Pixel Remaster version, much like all the other Pixel remasters, there's auto battle, so you want to not constantly be inputting the precise attacks that you're doing. You want to let auto battle take care of it as much as possible, so you constantly have to input what you want to do, and then let auto battle take over and use that as much as possible.
So something I want to touch upon that you mentioned, that you'll essentially be leveling up punching for quite a while. Is that much stronger than using weapons?
As I understand it, yeah. I mean, I'm not an expert on FF2, I have to say. But as I understand it, yeah, punching scales up the best in terms of just straight damage. And end game, there will be some characters that have really high levels that they come equipped with when you get them in your party, namely Rickard and Leon. They will already be very high level in swords, and they will actually be doing damage with that. Also, because by that time we get the blood sword, which I think everyone who's played FF2 knows that's really good. But yeah, for most of the game, most of the damage is going to come from punching. There'll be some fights where we rely on throwing some spell books at the enemies, teleport them away, stuff like that. But yeah, largely it's punching.
I assume tomes aren't used in the Pixel Remaster anywhere near as much as other versions of the game, where you're essentially teleporting everything away.
No. I think in some of the other versions, I don't know as much about those, but I think on a lot of those you use it even just to get through random encounters. In this version, there's very few unrunnables, so mostly.
So
we
as a
just try
result,
to
you
run
don't
from
have
everything.
to kill them because you can just flee and be on your way.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I did wonder.
And
sorry, go on.
I think teleport does work on a lot of things, but we don't use it that much.
That's a shame. I almost missed the randomness of throwing a teleport time and hoping for the best that it actually goes through.
There'll still be like 2 fights where we do have to land that.
Glorious. Okay, well, thank you, Sanzu, for being the first one. I do what is at this point a tradition where I end every segment by asking the guest a question. It's the same question to everyone. You've got 5 seconds to answer the question, and then I'm booting you out. This year, the question is, which Final Fantasy has the best main characters? Sanzu, take it away.
I considered being spicy with this one, but I gotta go just with the boring old answer of it's Cloud for FF7.
Cloud for FF7. Okay, well, we've got 1 vote in for FF7. I guess I'll specify some characters here and there, just in case someone happens to say FF13 and, you know. 1 to FF7, though. FF7 is winning. Thank you to Zonzik for that. Next, I believe we have Awesome Waves for Final Fantasy V.
Hello, Chris. What's going on?
Hello, Awesome Waves.
How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing all right. I'm very hot. Very, very, very hot, and I'm glad I have an
feel
ice cold beverage next to me.
Good. I hope it's hard and cold. That's good.
It is definitely cold. It is definitely cold. I hope you're doing well. We shall reveal the teams now. We have Bodcap on Team Mog. Zero Star on Team Chocobo, and rounding out Team Tombury is Awesome Waves himself.
I'll take it. Green Irish flag. Let's go. Green team.
It suits so much more than I thought. It works. It just works.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
All right, fantastic. So the first thing to get into with Final Fantasy V. Final Fantasy V, when a lot of people think of the game, they'll think, essentially, great job system. It's like the job system, almost. Can you explain what the job system is and how that is used through the run?
Absolutely. Yeah, FF5, I've actually only played it myself casually for the first time last year on the Super Nintendo, with the idea of learning it for the relay eventually, actually. And it is by far and away like the most quintessential Final Fantasy experience, in my opinion, of all of them. Just because the job system itself carries the entire game. It's like, there's no downsides to it, like I believe FF3 had. And FF2 and FF4 didn't really have the proper job system. So FF5 is the real optimal version of it. I don't think it really came back in such a simple manner in any of the games. But basically, yeah, there's a lot of jobs. I don't know exactly how many, but there's a lot of them. And they go from the usual warriors and thieves and knights and they're all basic things, black mages, white mages. But the other aspect of it with FF5 is that you can, as you gain AP and learn abilities with one job, you can actually use that ability while you're in another job. So you can kind of get subclasses, which is used to advantage in the speedrun as well. So yeah, you can swap on the fly. Obviously, they have different equips for stuff. But in the course of the speedrun, if we want to take it to that, the jobs that we mainly use, I guess, would be the real all-star of the run is Thief. Because on the Super Nintendo version, you cannot dash without having a Thief or the dash ability learned. So we basically always have a Thief on this. Literally, as soon as we get the first job crystals, we equip Thief, so we can run. That also gives us no back attacks, which is phenomenal for any speedrun. Not that we get too many encounters that we're not prepared for, but no back attacks is phenomenal. We can steal stuff, which is always good, which is actually used for duping, which I'll touch on soon. So basically, yeah, Thief, the best job that actually kills no bosses whatsoever. And then, let me think, I'm going to skim through my head to, like, we use Blue Mage, which is, everyone knows Blue Mage. We learn the enemy abilities, like the enemy skill materia from FF7 or so. We learned Goblin Punch, which we use very effectively for the early game. Then we use Black Mages. there's an interesting mechanic which actually is present in most of the early Final Fantasy games, where you can break rods, because you can actually re-equip mid-battle, but you can actually just use rods if you're using a mage class that can do that. So like Black Mage, Red Mage, and Time Mage all do that. So we take advantage of breaking rods to kill loads of bosses. That's what we use Black Mage, Red Mage, Time Mage for. Time Mage actually has the exit spell, so we can just teleport out of dungeons. Very important once we get that. Some of the more obscure ones, I guess there's a Mediator, which is like Beastmaster. We capture 2 monsters during the run. It's actually a terrible class, I would say, casually, because you can only use the ability once, and then you got to go recapture the monster again. I don't know why they thought that was a good idea, but look.
The absolute worst version of Pokemon.
It's like, yeah, capture a Squirtle, use Bubble Beam, he's gone.
It's gone.
you need a new Squirtle. Go get him.
He's fulfilled his contract. That's it. He's gone now. Good luck. Like, he's retired.
Sign up for one job only. That's it.
Yeah. You want Squirtle back? He'll be sunbathing on the beach. He's done.
That's it. With the sunglasses and all. But then, so I guess for the rest of the game, it moves straight to, we use ninjas to abuse spamming scrolls. We throw scrolls. We use samurais for guild toss, which is amazing. I'll touch on the guild toss again in a minute because we need lots of money for that.
Mm-hmm.
And having money, we do. Was it dupe? Never mind. And then actually, I think like Dancer and Bard get like one moment in the spotlight near the end of the game. And that's kind of it, yeah, for the jobs. Maybe I'm forgetting something. But yeah, that's it. So we do get to use quite a lot of them. And so it's a nice, not a bad showcase for all the jobs in FF5.
Yeah, I'm hyped that Mediator is used twice during the run. That's really cool.
What's your favorite job, Chris?
You know what my favorite job is? It's Geomancer. I love Geomancer in FF5. As soon as I equipped it, I knew it was worthless. It's going to have 1 or 2 hyper niche uses to, like, one-shot things. And outside of that, it's terrible. And that's exactly what it was, and I love it.
I'd expect nothing less than that to be your decision, Chris. That's fine. I'll be issuing a formal complaint to the relay after this. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. Just DM Seraph and he'll put it in the complaints bin. Idea.
Perfect.
Box. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just touched on duping. So FF5 does have duping. Can you tell me about that? Can anything go wrong within the duping?
Oh, yes. I guess we'll do some overview on what can go wrong in FF5 after, but it would take probably more than the 10 minutes we're allotted. But duping is the one real major glitch we use in FF5 speedrun. So we dupe 2 things. We dupe ethers. We get 255 of them. So it's basic. And I'll come back around. And then we also dupe dragon fangs. So we can do this dragon mix that like gives our party members haste and more attack power and stuff. So we do it twice in the run. Once we do within the first hour. So we need a specific encounter, a specific setup. Basically, what you do is you get a ninja to equip an item, equip a sword that you have 1 of. So we equip a Mitchell sword. Then there's 0 in our inventory. Then we throw the empty slot, and the game underflows that value. And then we immediately, in the same fight, we steal from the enemy, and the item goes into that slot, but has a quantity that's underflowed. So basically, we get 255 ethers, which is our bread and butter for money making for the run, which will add up to us buying loads of stuff, and also that our samurais will eventually need loads of money to throw at people. And then the second one is actually like way later in the run. It's just at the end of World 2, so like literally maybe 40 minutes left in the run, maybe 50, whatever. But we do dragon fangs, which are like a rare item that we use to do a mix with chemist. So we need 99 of them. We actually do sell them again. So actually they do account for a lot of our money for the late game. We end up selling like 60 of them. Just to have enough money to buy some running shoes for auto haste near the end of the game. But yeah, so duping. What can go wrong with duping? The first encounter isn't so bad as long as you're on step count. We'll have to come back to touching on step count again. The second encounter, however, a lot of things can kind of go wrong because it's a rare encounter to even get. So even if you're off steps and you have to force it, it could take ages. You need to be really quick with your inputs because you want to berserk both the enemies you're fighting, 2 dragons, a red and blue dragon, and then you need to use guard with your knight, so you're invincible and vulnerable for the time being. And then you need to throw twice. We underflow this one twice, and then you need to steal from the blue dragon, which is not the default input. If you steal the rare steal, which is a cabin, the run is, well, your PB attempt is over. Obviously, the relay run won't be over, but there's a chance that you are 2 hours plus into the run, 2/3 of the way through the run, and you can just get the rare steal and your run is dead. So that is a fun thing to look forward to. I've had it happen to me twice in the last month. It's happened to me twice. So we look forward to that happening bodcap in this relay if everything goes well.
I think that would be a first for trying to jinx another runner before. I'm impressed. I'm excited for that. So what can you do if you get a cabin? Do you just have to run away, accept that steps are doomed, and try and find it again?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, you can flee the fight. If you're on steps, I think like there was another way of getting that encounter right after, but you would have to like redo the setup and kind of hope for the best again in the fight. But yeah, I think in the relay, look, we're going to have so many safety saves. We'll just have to get on with it. It's kind of what it's going to be. We'll just figure it out when we go wrong. It's like Swansea told me before when he was learning the game that he didn't really figure out the backups. He just didn't make any mistakes. That's the easy way to get through FF5.
That sounds like a terrifying thing to do in a relay. And speaking of terrifying things in relays, FF5 is also known for essentially being brutal, right? It requires you to play
Absolutely.
pretty much near on perfectly throughout the run. Why is that?
So FF5 has tile-based movement. It's like obviously top-down. One of the original 6 have all the same movement. However, FF5 has a step count, so and it starts from the very, very beginning. And so basically the amount of tiles of movement we make through every screen, we need to be on track. Like there is some little bits of leeway in specific screens. You don't always know which screens have a bit of leeway or not. But so if you, for example, moved 1 tile to the right by accident and then had to move 1 tile back, that means you're 2 tiles extra. You are more than likely going to get an encounter right before the next doorway, which wrecks your encounter formations. It can there are chances where you can redeem the actual step count itself, but the your encounter table, let's say, so the formations of enemies that you expect will fall off of what you expect them to be. And that matters because, like I said, you've got the 2 dupe fights that you want the correct encounters for. The fights where we steal stuff, we want the correct encounters. The fights where we capture enemies, we want the correct encounters as well. So FF5 just has no leeway for making mistakes, especially within the first hour. I would say once all of us get through the first hour on steps or so, I think we're all fairly confident of getting through it from there. But if you fall off steps, we also have a mini dragon grind section, which accounts for a lot of our AP and experience for the run. And that happens just like an hour and 10 in. And if you're on steps for that, it's just 3 fights in a row, bang, 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 out of there. If they're not, they are also 3 rare encounters. So you're into backup territory immediately with that stuff. But look, it's FF5, and at least you put it in a safe place at the relay, not at the very end.
Yeah. I mean, it would be tragic if Final Fantasy V was at the end and the runners had the pressure on them of carrying their team home, of just play perfectly and you'll probably win.
Yeah, for the content for the viewers, I will say, like, if something goes incredibly wrong, like any team could probably swing it at the end. So yeah, again, hoping that something bodcap, no worries. Yeah, just for clarity, myself and bodcap are friends, and we both learned the game at the exact same. We started learning together, so it's just friendly rivalry. But I hope he goes off steps. It's okay.
All right, well, fantastic. Thank you very much, Waves. I appreciate you being here. I am very excited for Final Fantasy V.
Me too.
Now, question I'm asking everyone: which Final Fantasy
Melody's
has
alive.
the best? No, not quite. Has the best main character?
Cecil FF4. Good luck.
Cecil FF4. Thank you. All right, so that's. Wait, did he say Cecil FF4? Hang on. What? I'm actually taken aback by that. I needed a second to register fully what he'd said. Cecil. Wow. I mean, he is almost like the FF8 head. The FF8 runner. Alright, well, I'm taken a little aback that he didn't say Squall, but I guess it wouldn't be the first time I've been surprised by people's answers. Alright. Up next, we have the wonderful Madelon, I believe.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening. How are you this evening?
Good. Excited to be in my very first relay as a runner.
Very, very nice. Okay, all right. So the teams for 12 are Madelon is on Team Mog, Harvey's on Team Choco, and Dessa on Team Tonbury. Did you have any team you particularly wanted to land on?
I'm mostly just very happy to be in the relay at all. Vocals are cool, so it's nice.
All right, well, that is wonderful to hear, and I appreciate it. So, FF12. This year, the category is New Game Minors. Let's just get the obvious out the way first. What is New Game Minors?
New Game Minus is a game mode that disables experience. So that means that all the characters will remain at their starting level for the entire run. So it's essentially a low level run, but without having to jump through hoops ourselves. So the game mode prevents leveling up, so we can kill as many enemies as we want. The game mode itself prevents us from gaining any levels. We still have all the license board available, so we still have the separate system where we can still learn abilities, new spells and such through the license board. So we can still improve characters that way, we can still get better equipment, but they will, Van will remain level 1, etc. They will remain low level.
Okay, and I pretty much most of my knowledge for 12 New Game Minus runs came from just watching you do them. They're fascinating. Given you're so low level throughout the entire run, you can't get away from being the initial level. How do you just get through the FF12 bosses that hit like really hard?
So we'll still be able to set up one character as a tank, so we'll use some licenses that actually do increase HP as well as better equipment to increase the HP of the tank, as well as have the tank equipped with a shield so he has some chance to block attacks. And also an important piece of the puzzle is the decoy spell. Decoy is a spell that you can cast on a character, so it casts decoy on the tank. You can see a tank as decoy by having this little duck appear next to the name. And it makes enemies focus on the character with a decoy. So if the enemies can see multiple of your characters, they always go for the tank if he has decoy. And that will help protect the other characters. So we have one tank set up with decoy that takes all the hits and has to keep himself alive by throwing high potions. And then the other two characters who are very squishy can then still focus on decoy and not get hit that way.
Wow, okay. So you essentially have a de facto tank.
Yes.
Very nice. Okay. So how do you then end up doing like damage to the bot? So you got like tanking figured out. How do you do damage at super minimum level?
Yeah, so it differs per part of the game what we do exactly. In the mid game we use a lot of magic, and one trick we use there to increase our damage output works as follows. We use the spell Reflect. And the idea is as follows. So suppose that the damage spell that we want to use is something like Tandara. If you cast Tandara on the boss, then you hit the boss once. But if you cast Tandara on your party and all your party members have Reflect on them, then on your 3 party members you reflect back the spell 3 times. So that way you can do triple damage. And then there's also even fights where we have guest party members. So now you have 4 members with Reflect on. And if you then start casting Tandara on yourself, you reflect 4 times and you have quadruple damage. So that really helps still get quite a good amount of damage in with magic. And then that's what we do for a lot of the mid game and a little bit in late game. And in the late game we will actually mostly switch over to using guns. So FF12 has different weapons with different properties, and guns have the special property that their damage does not depend on levels at all. It's just a better gun deals better damage. And because it doesn't depend on levels at all, it's actually a very good weapon times for such a low level run. And then we set up 2 gunners, and then on top of that we also use the ability called Adrenaline, which is an ability that makes the gun user deal more damage if it is in critical HP. So we will deliberately have the gunners on very low health, so they get this extra damage doubler of adrenaline on top of their gun damage. And then even other multipliers can still be done on top of that. So the gunners will also have Berserk on, which also increases their damage. And in some fights, we might also give them other buffs like Bravery and Haste to add up to that even more. And overall, these strategies for dealing damage have been so fast and so good that right now the world record for New Game Minus is faster than any percent, despite being lower level. So despite it essentially being 80%, but you're not allowed to level up, it's now faster.
How? I guess is like the first question that comes to mind.
Well, right now the FF12 community is like, well, probably 80% is up for a reroute, because what New Game Minus has been doing with this route is just so good that it's even beating being able to level up. So like probably it could be that a new any percent route would just take a lot of the ideas which are right now used for New Game Minus.
It's 11 seconds faster than any percent. That blows my mind. Wow. Man, just when I thought I couldn't love this category anymore, it finds more ways to make me love it more.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's also, once you start doing it, it has so much detail going on with positioning. It's a really fun run.
That is actually amazing. Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you for coming on and talking about FF12. I do appreciate it. It is always fascinating to hear about FF12. Final question. Which Final Fantasy has the best main character?
Final Fantasy IX.
Final Fantasy IX. All right. No character mention, so we'll leave that blank, but I suspect it will end up not mattering at some point. All right. Man, I cannot get over that. That is absolutely fascinating. It's faster. I'm so excited about that. Okay, anyway, next up, I believe we have D wins for Final Fantasy XV. I believe you are here with me.
Yep, I can hear you fine.
Hello there. How are you doing this evening, or this afternoon in your case?
Yep, can't complain. How are you?
I am well. I am well. Eventually, the heat and the sweat, they're slowly dissipating. So
it's getting better.
Exactly, we are getting there. So you're here for FF15. This FF15 run is very different. And it was going to be even more different if I don't announce the team. So let's do that real quick. T Wins is on Team Mug. Yida is on Team Choco, and rounding out Team Tombury is Kios. Is there any team you wanted to be on particularly, or?
Well, I'm all for Team Cactuar, but until that becomes a reality, I don't have a preference.
Okay, he said something in the first sentence of that, but then said doesn't have a preference. So that's good to hear. Unfortunately, it was static before that. Who knows what was being said? Right, so with FF15, this is a very, very, very different run from what we've seen in the past from Final Fantasy XV. Can you just take me through what happens?
Sure, so in the older any percent category, the game was about 4 hours in length, going from all the chapters of the game from chapters 1 to 14, with very minimal glitching. But in this new any percent route, we are doing maybe half of chapter 1, going out of bounds to skip around to do a side quest that is normally intended only for chapter 3. And following that, we're just gonna really break the game with a bunch of menu manipulation. And long story short, we're gonna wrong warp to the final chapter of the game in chapter 14.
You said that very, very casually, just as one does. You're just gonna wrong warp to the end of the game.
Yeah, well, you get used to it, grinding routes to bring down the minutes.
Yeah, I guess so. So how does that process work? How do you wrong warp?
Right, so the major glitch that lets us do that is called Active Menu Glitch, or AMG. It effectively allows us to move around the overworld map with a menu open, whether that's our main menu, our tactical menu, or even the save menu. So, through that award for the side quest I mentioned before in Chapter 3, that is going to be our trusty Chocobo. Riding that bird with the menu open specifically onto a save icon, where in this game normally you can only save on solid land, but if we save and hop on the bird at the same time, we could bring that sort of selection reticle all the way out to sea, back where the Crown City is. And if we end up saving and reloading at a specific point in the map, the game gets confused not knowing where we are and just conveniently wrong warps us to the final area of the game.
What? Are there like any other warps that like take you anywhere else, or is this just the only known one and it just happens to take you to the end?
Sadly, no. This is with the most recent patch of the game. The main continent is naturally joined with the second one of Altissia, but you can't progress through the game with any kind of main quest markers. And the other enemy continent in Niflheim, that's exclusively opened only when you actually enter through the chapter with legitimate means. So only through this AMG glitch, we can only wrong warp to the one city in Chapter 14.
Huh. Isn't it nice how these things like work out so well?
Yeah, we want to go fast.
Yeah, I guess so. So the next obvious question to ask is, you're in Chapter 3, you've now wrong warped to the end of the game.
Uh-huh.
How hard is the end of the game given you are almost certainly very, very, very low level, right?
Yeah, exactly. So on a normal playthrough, or rather a normal speedrun, any percent, you would be around the level mid-30s to mid-40s. And from this route, we're actually still in single digits. We don't even breach level 10. Despite having such low stats to go around and, tackle the endgame enemies, thanks to the free LC we got with this game, or the free downloadable content, we are available to use a piece of body armor that effectively nulls all incoming damage, and a very strong sword that enhances our warp strike damage. So combining these for essentially all the fights for the endgame is going to keep us very safe and next to immune from dying. So even though we're a low level, we can still take down the enemy baddies.
Huh. Okay. So, like, is there any risk, or is, like, time loss in this kind of run just a case of, oh, well, this went wrong, oh, I didn't quite do as much damage as fast as I want to?
Yeah, I would say this is more to enemy battle RNG, where they kind of jump around the map, and our main character Noctis has a bad habit of whiffing his warp strikes, which are our main source of damage. So you have to hope you're timing them correctly, and sort of being dynamic with the enemy movement, and hoping that you throw out your attacks at the opportune moments.
Huh, that is... that is wild. Alright, well, thank you very much, D-Wins. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, of course.
Now, obviously, I end all of these asking exactly the same question. We've got a very small amount of time to answer.
Uh-huh.
Which Final Fantasy has the best main character?
That would be Final Fantasy VIII.
Final Fantasy VIII. All right. It's 1-1-1-1 at the minute. 1 vote to 7, 4, 9, and 8. Low-key kind of gutted that 10 and 6 don't have any votes yet, but I'm sure someone will come through. Now we're ready for the next person to come in, who I think is Kama or Nikki. I'm staring at my schedule now, and I'm waiting for someone to be dragged into the call. It is indeed Nikki. Hello. How are you?
It's late. What's up?
It's late. Oh, we'll take what we can get. I'm doing well. Before I reveal the teams, is there any team that you want to end up on?
I mean, I usually don't care, so it's a 9th attempt. I haven't been on Team Tonberry, actually.
Haven't been on Team Tonberry. Okay, well, let's see if this is the year. Alexaster on Team Mog. Brainbugged on Team Choco. So that means Nikki ends up on Team Tonberry. Stabby, You've completed the trifecta, and you've only needed between 300 and 400 relays to do so. I think that's how many you've been in at this point. It's been a few.
To be fair, in the first few there was no Team Tonberry. But
yeah, that is true. Okay, so this is Tactics Advance 2. Last year we had Tactics Advance. How does this run differ from its predecessor?
yeah, so actually quite a bit, because while the gameplay is very similar, they basically nerfed all the things that were OP in Tactics Advance. So for example, there is no, hey, we'll just grind early levels like in Tactics Advance and just quickly get level 3 characters in like the 3rd fight or something. So for example, yeah, we'll just start off playing normal video games. Like the clip we have here, this fight should be the 3rd longest in the run. It ends at around the 1 hour mark. And we still completely normally fight this. Without any additional grinding or anything, just running through the main story. Which is like 23 fights. Yeah, tackle the challenges ahead of until we can finally get things that kill stuff faster.
So, like, are the fights up until then still relatively close? Are they comfortable?
So yeah, up to this is the first one where you have to like actually strategize and be kind of careful. Before that, the first ones are like very straightforward. You just dish out as much DPS as possible, but yeah, if you play a tactics game fair, that also means we have nice RNG swings. That's great.
Oh, lovely. All right, well, on things, you know, where you get later on and you start getting more tools to take down enemies faster, what are those?
Yeah, so as mentioned, basically everything that Final Fantasy Tactics Advance had got nerfed, but we also got 2 new like what's the classes called, like the Seeks and the Griers. We sadly never use the Griers, but yeah. So the Seeks have a class with a job with an ability, which is called reverse items. So just imagine you have X potions, or like potions in general, very powerful. X potions heal for 200, high potions for 100. And you have item lore, which doubles the effect of those items. And then you have reverse items, which, well, instead of now healing for 200 times 2, we reverse that effect and we just deal nice and cozy 400 damage. With 1 attack, which once we get there halfway into the run, allows us to like have a nice breather and just murder stuff.
Every time you're allowed to use reverse, I swear it's in every speedrun. Right? There's the glitch in FF3.
It's just because items and potions are just so powerful.
That is wild. So from that moment onwards, once you get access to just nuking all of the enemies for 400 a turn, is it just relatively comfortable from that moment onwards then?
For quite a while it is. Obviously, like RNG, enemy behavior, and all that and just hit chance. In this game, a lot nicer because like front, back, and side attacks don't get influenced by accuracy like in FFTA, but they're just pure damage, which means for our potions it doesn't matter. But for the final 3 fights, we again like because we just run through more or less, we are very underleveled. And the final boss is deal quite a bit of damage. So yeah, we need to be really, really careful. It's a final trifecta, however you call it. Gauntlet, I guess.
The final boss rush.
Rush. Rush is a good word. Yeah.
That is wild though. It's just another game that is conquered by the joys of reverse.
Yeah, but like as I said, you did like almost 2 hours into a 4-hour run, so.
Yeah, that's fair. I also want to ask, just you specifically, like Tactics Advanced 2 doesn't have like many runners, but you've put I would say like a fair bit of time into it, right? What is it about Tactics Advanced 2 that you like?
I mean, I've just generally enjoyed the game a lot. It was actually my third ever speed game, which I started routing because of power outage. So it was just me and my DS and a different room which actually had power, which I charged it on. And yeah, it was just a very versatile game also. Like it might actually, for nowadays times, maybe a bit slow, maybe slow text boxes and such, but you have honest fights, you have like having to be careful about your setup to sometimes manipulate enemy movement, sometimes have a chance to manipulate enemy movement. Then you have a not so big grind to just get all those things you need for the mid and late game. So it's just very versatile and all that. We also had a pop quiz at some point where you needed to like answer 10 trivia questions, which like what cures petrification or all that, and to get an item, Eureka Crystal, which is a consumable item that just yields your whole party to full, which is a nice backup for the final boss.
Right.
But as speedrunners are, such a mission obviously takes 4 to 5 minutes. So.
Yeah, so the root out the safety immediately. It can't exist.
We have found different safeties to still make it safe enough for the relay, I hope.
Okay.
The final boss says nope, then, well...
Okay.
You know how it is.
I do unfortunately know how it be.
More experience with that, but we have seen things.
That's great. You also touched upon, like, there is a bit of grinding in this game. Now, in the first game, the grind section is 1 whole hour long in the speedrun. I take it the grind in this game is not an hour long.
No, it's like, I don't know, we take like 5 minutes recruiting the Sikhs that I was talking about, because obviously we'll run with a lot of Sikhs. And then for once we have to wait for 2 items, which means we need 6, in this game you unlock items and shops during the bazaar function, so you need like 3 loots, L-O-O-T, per item that you want to get.
Sorry, can you take that back? I really like the idea of someone just whipping out a musical instrument and playing it in front of everyone. All right, well... So we grind a bit of levels, so by dispatching, which works very fairly quickly, you can get like 60 experience points at least, so we get like 3 or 4 levels. In total, it's like 15 minutes of grinding maybe, for getting all those things, so it also the grinding is fairly manageable. Yeah, I was gonna say, so it's like really not that much, like, at all, really. Just a few levels and off you go again.
Yeah, it really doesn't feel like it.
Okay.
Some of the drops you can also, like, get by being lucky.
Oh, good, a dynamic
enemies
speedrun.
also drop loot, which you could use, so yeah. Just get lucky and that saves time as well.
Okay, well, if everything goes according to plan, we'll find out this week when I do a blind speedrun of this game. Woo! All right, well,
if you want help, you know where to find me.
Oh, I will be tapping into the resources of knowing Nikki as much as humanly possible throughout that run. Don't you worry. So, thank you very much, Nikki, for being here, though. I do appreciate it. As always, the last question, which Final Fantasy has the best main character?
So for that question, I needed to think of female main characters, which we have 10-2, 13-2, and Lightning Returns. Sorry, Yuna, your plan sucks. Lightning way exceeds in 13 and not in her game, so I have to give it to Sarah. Final Fantasy 13-2.
Final Fantasy 13-2. Alright, and Sarah. That's good to know. I really thought Nikki was going to say Lightning. It's a good thing that I've not been trying to guess, because I would have been wrong on every single person so far. Which... Yeesh. Well, you know what they say. It's about the friends you make along the way and the journey there. Next up, I believe, we have Mr. Zik3.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. How are you doing this evening?
Oh, pretty good. Can't complain. How are you? Enjoying the pre-show?
I am very much enjoying the pre-show so far. It's nice when you finally get there and you get to speak to all of these wonderful runners, including yourself. Past everyone so far, is there any team in particular you want to end up on? Any mascot you feel more affinity with?
Hoping for Team Mog, but we'll see. I was on the, Team Mog victory run last year, so...
Okay, well,
Little
for
attached.
Team Mog, we have... Sick 3.
Let's go.
Harshaw makes out Team Chocobo and James Runs is on Team Tonbury. This has worked out fantastically so far. Everyone's pretty much gotten the team they want to be on. That's as
You love
good
to
as it
see
can
it.
go. So,
And then maybe if I'm on the opposite team of Foxy so I can beat him, that would also be good.
well, we've got a while yet to figure out what Team Foxy is on, the FF10 runner. So, you're here to talk about FF4. FF4 picks a remaster. At the minute, it has several routes. It's undergone several changes recently as well. What's different between the routes? What's changed?
Yeah, so Final Fantasy IV Picture Master's gone through many different iterations. I've been running the game since close to when it released, so I've seen all these, whether it's patches that come out or new strats that have been found. I've seen so many iterations. You see enough iterations of the route, they all start blending together. You do a run and you're like, wait, what am I doing? This is the old route. But I know currently, and it'll be interesting what you see this weekend, is we are all kind of doing different things, different routes, and different strats throughout us. So you're definitely going to see some differences between myself and James. And I know that some people, one of the things that was always consistent was leveling, grinding levels of Cecil on Mount Ordeals. And some people still like to do that. Some newer routes decide to skip the grind on Mount Ordeals, to skip the RNG, and you just push forward with a level 1 Cecil. You just kind of work with other characters. If you're doing the no leveling on Mount Ordeals, you kill everybody but Palom on Skarm, so he just gets a ton of levels, and then you utilize Fira and Thundara on Palom to damage bosses like Bygone, while Cecil gets the levels he needs in the bosses. And there's definitely some cool different routes when it comes to leveling and choosing which characters you'll use.
Right, so it's so different that you just end up using entirely different characters to be useful.
Right.
Wow, that's wild. So what one does your route use? Is Cecil useful?
Eventually, but I go for the Mount Ordeals grind route. You don't have to worry about giving him crossbow and holy arrows and then praying you don't get 8 zombie back attacks 5 times in a row. I'd rather just go down the mountain and move on. Sometimes if you get a Lilith encounter, you just throw a high potion at it and dies. So you're sure, I'll take it. But it's nice to not have to worry about the RNG of encounters.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's very hyped to hear. I really like it when a game has several routes and different runners showcasing off the different routes. I love variety, in a race, I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah. And I say that as an FF10 runner where there has been Oh, right, that's it. No variety ever.
You can open up the notes and complete a run whether you've done it before or not.
Exactly. And also, I guess, like I brought up FF10. FF10 is a very, safe, by-the-book game. In FF4, how scary can certain fights be?
Yeah, FF4 can be very brutal. I know, like, one of the big spooky bosses we're all three of us are going to be on the lookout for is Calcabrana. Calcabrana, for those that may not know, or if you do know, is like 6 dolls, and then they form into the big doll. And if you don't kill it fast enough, it'll break back up into the 6 dolls, and then it just starts getting out of control. And you can get kind of... So a lot of the times, you'll just focus with, like, for example, Kane using jump, and Cecil covering Kane, and you can just maybe get unlucky, or it just decides to use glare on Cecil and then punch Kane in the face. And you're like, alright, cool, I guess we're restarting this one. And, like, the autosave isn't from, like, it's from, like, before you talk to King Giot. So, like, Calcabrana is one of those ones you just you never enjoy messing with. We've also been seeing it, but the 4 Fiends can also always be a spooky fight on its own, especially even individually. Fights like Rubicante. That's one of those fights that, no matter how many times you do it, is always like adapt on the fly. Like, all right, well, let's see what happens, and we'll go from there.
That's good to know. So, I do know FF4, but the FF4 run that I know is the 3D version that originally came out on the DS, which then ported to PC. And even in that game, where you use reverse on your parties, so the enemies, when they hit you, they heal you, which you think like, oh, well, Lamau,
easy
right?
mode.
This is easy mode. This is going to be free. You can just lose minutes if things go wrong, because you don't have that many ways of doing damage, and one errant cast, suddenly you're in trouble. It's good to know that everyone has problems with
It's also interesting, like you mentioned it, that like all the versions of FF4 are all like so different in how some of their boss fights work. I know like 3D Zeromus is completely different from how Pixel Remaster fights Zeromus, and it's always interesting to see the differences in the different FF4 runs.
So, like, you touched upon that. How does the Pixel Remaster deal with Zeromus?
So we're gonna power level Kane as high as possible, and then use Kane's jump ability, and with some well-timed jumps, we will jump over every single attack that lethal attack that Zeromus does. Because Zeromus's attacks in his script are predictable. He will do the same attacks in the same order every time. So as long as you know that, you can skip it all.
Yeah. And like, is this consistent?
It is. It's actually very consistent.
Okay.
It does take some, I'd say a little learning curve when you're like learning the game to get used to the timing of the jumps and which attacks come. But once you get it, it's actually very extremely consistent, which is nice.
The 4 Fiends looks very scary. I just saw a 250 HP for Soya and everyone else dead. And
yes.
Then
You are just kind of... Usually you're okay, but sometimes Rubicante will just high roll Fusoya into the ground.
Yeah. And last but not least, I've essentially given you a minute or two to talk about Final Fantasy trading card game, because I know you love it. I lurk in your streams a fair bit. It comes up semi-frequently. Here's your chance to talk about how great it is.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I got this minute. But yes, nobody here probably knows, but there's a Final Fantasy trading card game. And it's a very fantastic game. It plays very similar to Magic the Gathering, but any of your favorite Final Fantasies, they probably have a character from it in the Final Fantasy. They have freaking Billy Bob from FF7 Remake. Like, you got it all. Unless they're a Tantalus member. They have something against Tantalus members. We don't have any of those.
Would you like to know a fun fact? I actually have a Final Fantasy trading card deck I have played Seraph in a game with the Final Fantasy trading card deck as well. I don't remember who won, which I assume means that he won, unfortunately. I think I'd remember if I did. I am vaguely familiar with it.
That's very fun. I highly recommend it to anybody.
And whilst I got you here, what's your favorite card? Art-wise, just the most cool looking.
Off the top of my head, I'm gonna have to go with there is a Beatrix card that I really enjoy.
Very nice. Okay, right. Well, now the actual last question then. I've asked everyone so far, which Final Fantasy has the best main character?
Yeah, you're not gonna like me, but I'm gonna say that the Final Fantasy trading card game has all of the main characters.
Yep, I'm gonna need you to give a real answer. I'm not putting that in, thank you very much. He left! I'm supposed to be the one kicking people out of calls, and he hung up on me! This isn't how this power dynamic works! How dare he? Okay. Well, he shall be banned from the relay, and I shall never speak to him ever again.
It was a great ride.
Yeah, I guess I'm just going to put trading card game down as his favorite Final Fantasy and rest my head in my hand a little bit. That's okay. Next up, I believe we have here Syl.
That is I.
That is you. How are you this evening or this afternoon?
I'm great. It's been a beautiful day. Got a nice long walk in with the dog before I started to make lunch.
Oh, love. It sounds like you've had a wonderful day. My goodness. All right. Well, time to announce some teams. Sebi is on Team Mog. Syl is on Team Chocobo. And rounding out Team Tonberry is Mutski. He, unfortunately, cannot be with us tonight, but we have Syl instead. So...
Thank you for having me.
Nice. It is very nice to have you. So, FF9 is inherently, like, really pretty random game. You've not been running, like, FF9 for that long, have you?
No, I think I got started about a year ago after your guys' last relay. I was remember watching and going, I think I could do that run. And now that I'm here a year later, I'm like, I have a lot of regrets.
Yeah. So, would you like to touch upon that a little bit? Like, FF9 is a fairly unforgiving game. What makes it, like, so unforgiving and brutal?
So I think the core components of the game is like super consistent, real easy. It didn't take me long to memorize a lot of the notes, but the core RNG aspect of the game is just unforgiving. I mean, coming into just the Mage Masher as your first split is just an RNG fest, and it's like where do you settle on what's a good Mage Masher steal and versus what's not? But that's also what makes it fun.
Do you want to touch upon what the Mage Masher steal is?
So right away at the beginning of the game, we go against Baku, who's wearing the dragon head, and we want to give Zidane the immediate power buff, so we got to steal it off Baku. Luckily, we have 4 people who can steal, but I think it is about a 6% chance, but it helps carry you all the way up the sea line because the next time you get a chance at a Mage Masher isn't until the Ice Cavern. So at least on PC we can reset 4, 5, 6 times and still get a good start to the stream.
Exactly. But in the relay, obviously you don't get to just reset as like load in, not fancying this one, didn't get the steal within 4 turns, try to reset. You've got to essentially ride it out until you get this 1 in 16 steal.
Oh yeah, I'm expecting one of us out of the gate just to be like 4 minutes behind on just a terrible Mage Masher attempt, and I believe it's going to be me for some odd reason.
You believe it's going to be you? Okay. Well, I believe that you won't, hopefully. There we go. One thing about FF9 that I've noticed when I guess it's like a veteran thing at this point, but if I'm introducing it to you, it's going to be a new thing. I've seen veteran FF9 runners, whenever they do a run for a marathon, for the relay, anything like that, they will start to count Mage Masher steals because they know it could go into like the 50s, the 60s, the 70 attempts at just stealing and failing over and over again.
It really is so bad, and I almost want to count because you said it, but now that you said it out loud, I'm like, I don't want to, and I can see some of my viewers in chat right now. They're like, don't jinx yourself. You know how the game likes to listen to you. It's so sentient.
You know, I don't believe in like karma or anything like that, but if a game was sentient, it's got to be FF9. Sure,
oh, absolutely.
Of all of the games that can hear you, it's got to be FF9.
I swear Square Enix lives in my microphone.
Yeah. So we're doing PC this year. I don't believe that you've done PSX, right?
I have not, but I've watched enough of Mutt and Pete in the past that if you got any questions, I could try to take a stab at it. I
was going to say, best. So as someone who is only an FF9 PC runner, what benefits do you think like FF9 PC has over its PSX counterpart?
Well, the first one is the most obvious. We get to skip a lot of the cutscenes right away. And I think that's what makes the Mage Masher reset attempt so terrible on PSX, because you almost don't get to start your steal attempts until you're like 3 minutes in the run versus HD PC, you're almost like 45 seconds in. So you can probably get like 4 steal attempts per their one. But then the other thing is definitely the lower encounter rate. I think last year's relay, you guys talked about the meme where it was like, PSX category is like super excited. They only got like a 4 encounter Black Mage Village entry, and then there's the HD PC guy who's like in sad and it's raining on him. He's like, I got a 4 encounter Black Mage Village entry because it's just so different.
I got 4 encounters in disc 1. That's it. My run's over. Yeah. Absolutely. I think the reason why there's such a difference in encounter threat is because on PC, okay, so I lurk in the FF9 Discord a lot, so forgive me if this is wrong, but I think on PC, when you're running, the game checks your encounter threat as you walking. So even though you're running, you barely get like considerably less encounter checks because the game thinks you're walking as you're just sprinting along.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I think the encounter rate is almost like 1/8 of the PSX category, and that would only be considered if you were walking the full time.
Yeah.
And who wants to do that?
Exactly. I think like the average encounter rate on PC is something like between 6 and 14, whereas on like PSX it could be anywhere between 50 and 70, and both of those are numbers that can absolutely happen a lot. And
that just scares me to hear.
Yeah. And talking of PC as well, do you like having like autosave there? Because on PSX, if you get to the end of the game, you're fighting one of the final bosses, you're fighting a notoriously scary boss, for example, Death Guys. You die, your run's over unless you've made the save beforehand, and as soon as you've got a good time, you are probably not making that save. Do you enjoy the fact that PC has an autosave so Death Guys can just slam the opening attack meter on you? Everyone's dead. Oh, but I have autosave, thank God for that, my run isn't over.
Absolutely, especially because then you don't have to do at least one more screen transition. You could do your equipment right in front of Kuja. It makes the lotto that is Death Guys a lot more comfortable. Because I've seen PC runners, they're on their 5th Death Guys attempt, and it almost doesn't feel as gross as it would have been on like a PSX run, where you have to go through the loading phase, then you got to run back up, wait for the transition. Nope, it pops you right back in front of Kuja. He gets to laugh at you real quick until you pull the lever on the slot machine that is Death Guys.
And like, speaking of Death Guys, one of the things I love about Final Fantasy IX the most, essentially disc 4, quote unquote, when you get to Nova Dragon and onwards, it's just a non-stop boss rush. So like, that's my favorite part of the run. Just like, on PSX and to some extent as well PC, but you skip some of the FMVs along the way. There's like the hype music that starts before Nova Dragon, and it's like, yeah, that's it. Like, we're on PB pace for getting to disc 4. This is it. This is what speedrunning is like. Do you have like a favorite moment in FF9 which is like that?
For me, it's definitely got to be the Yana or the You're Not Alone phase. It's almost painful that we turbo through that entire section because I just love the music. I love the challenges of the 3 monsters that you go through. And then especially if you play that game for the first time, you can still feel a little bit of that emotion coming through with Zidane as he comes out of that chair where he betrays his friends and now he's getting along with him again. And it's like a good importance for that. And then you get to the chain of boss rushes afterwards, and you're just like, I need to go beat up Kuja.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm glad you said Yana, because that's also like another section I love as well. And like a lot of FF9, just a banger. Just so many banging tunes across the entire run. It's fantastic.
You ever need a little motivation in the gym? It's a great song.
You know what? I haven't done that, but I shall try it. All right, well, thank you very much for being here, Sil. As always, the last question I get to ask you, what Final Fantasy has the best main character?
I'm going to go with 7 because it has the good boy that is Red 13.
What? Has any runner so far said the Final Fantasy they're running? They haven't, right? All right, well, that's 2 for FF7. Cloud and Red 13. What a unit. All right, well, next up, if I hope you've all enjoyed Lindblom, we have Final Fantasy III. And here with me, we have Ionic Karma.
Hello.
Hello. How are you this afternoon?
I'm doing fantastic. Excited to be part of the relay again.
Fantastic. Okay, is there any team you want to, your fancy being on a little bit more than the others?
Maybe Tomberry, but we'll see where it goes.
Maybe Tonberry. Okay, that sounded very non-committal. So I won't feel too bad if you're not on Tonberry. Muchiha is on Team Mog. Ionic Karma is on Team Choco. And Nashlax rounds out Team Tonberry. Is Team Choco still good enough for you? You happy to be repping the Chocobos?
I do like Chocobos. Chocobos are very cute.
Fantastic. So, FF3. We have already gone through FF5 earlier. We were talking about, how important the job system are to that. In FF3, characters also have jobs, but they also have job levels, which go far beyond FF5s, as well as their own levels. How important are levels in FF3?
Well, this is a really complex answer, and the short answer is it varies. So to go into a little more detail, we'll explain job levels in general. So everyone knows character levels. You level up, you gain stats. And based on whatever class you're in, you gain HP, you gain MP sometimes, or you gain match slots. Job levels are tied specifically to a job as you would expect for a job level, and they level up a little bit differently than character levels. In FF3, if you take 5 actions, you'll gain 1 job level. So what job levels actually do is they increase the amount of hits you do for like melee attacks. They increase the your efficacy, potency of magic spells for like healing spells, damage spells, and like status ailments. And they also increase like job specific stuff. So like Viking's Peruk, for example, will lowers the defense more. Dark Knight's Soul Eater does more damage, and stuff like that. So early on in the run, job levels aren't very important because we just switch between classes so often, because as we keep getting new crystals, we go like from initially to Freelancer or Onion Knight in this case, where we kind of just don't want to stick there. Take Monk for a little bit, and then the first time our job levels have a little bit of benefit is Black Mage, because we're on Black Mage for a good amount of time. So over time, it doesn't make too much of a difference, but it does increase our magic damage a bit. But not enough that we're fine just switching off to Red Mage once that becomes available to us and we have the proper gear to be able to tank some bosses after that. So when job levels actually come online in terms of the speed one is Dragoon in particular. And the reason is because Dragoon is basically our carry for the run as it shows on screen currently. We use it as solo Dragoon for the entire fight. So we want to be able to increase our number of hits because that increases our damage drastically. So like early on the run, we're missing a lot of attacks. So it's kind of hard to see sometimes because even though jump doesn't have a number of hits indicator, it actually on the screen, it actually does have a number of hits. So early on, our damage varies wildly and it's kind of low until we get higher job levels. And by the end of the run, we want job level 99 just to max our chances of dealing the most damage possible. So as I mentioned earlier, we have 5 actions that we need to take per job level. So our whole route is trying to make sure that we do those 5 actions. And thankfully, the Dragoon jump counts as 2 actions. So a lot of the times, it just kind of takes care of itself. But you'll see in the run, if there's just 2 enemies or 1 enemy, a lot of times we'll like defend 1 or 3 times just to make sure that we hit that 5 actions so we can gain the job level. And we'll kind of make sure we don't have to do as much grinding near the end because we don't really do much grinding in this game except for one section where we level up Dragoon to just catch it up in terms of job level so that we can do enough damage to just continue the run.
Okay, and you mentioned there the Dragoon is going to get to level 99. How long does that take?
So we get Dragoon about hour and 20 into the run, hour 10, hour 20, and then the run ends at 3 hours. We're on Dragoon for the entire time. So it takes about a little over half to like 2/3 of the run in order to get it from 1 to 99, as we take like basically all random encounters on the way, except for a few random encounters that are just too dangerous and we just want to flee from.
So which random encounters are like scary ones? What is it you have to be looking out for that makes you avoid essentially just jumping on the enemy over and over again?
So the biggest ones are in like mid-late game are ones that have status ailments that kind of just debilitate us. So there's one enemy called the Nemesis that appears, and near the end of the run, it has the chance to paralyze. We don't have anything to prevent paralyze, and they show up in groups of 4. So you're just going to get paralyzed, and there's nothing you can really do about it. So you just gotta run, or you will just die. Another one is the King Behemoth. It just takes so long to kill, and then he'll drop a meteor on your head once you kill him. So you just don't want to be a part of that. It's the classic King Behemoth of any Final Fantasy.
Yeah. Those behemoths are always tricky. They're nightmarish. Fun facts, recently I've been doing some Nemesis percent in FF10. Nemesis is just like a super boss, but you have to capture 10 of every enemy in the game by just whacking it over the head a bunch. Once you capture 10 of every enemy, if you kill an 11th Behemoth King, the 11th is the one that casts Meteor as a death rattle that will almost certainly wipe you. They're such a troll enemy.
And the meteor cast animation in 10 is so long too, so you're losing a bunch of time too.
Yeah, it's tragic. And also, last year, before the relay, there was a lot of panic in some of the Pixar remasters because they were getting some significant patches weeks, if not days, before the relay. Has FF3 been hit by any patches since the last set of runs last year?
Yeah, so we got hit with one significant change that wasn't even announced anywhere. It just, the patch was announced, but we didn't see the change. It was only until people started doing runs on a new patch we realized something was wrong. So what happened is Two-Headed Dragon, for whatever reason, Square Enix just decided it doesn't deal enough damage. It already one-shots us before, but now it one-shots us extra hard. So we have like at this point around like 2.93k max HP. Before it could hit a max of like around 3.5, 3.8k, and sometimes they'll still kill you, but a lot of times you'll be able to survive the hit, and then you can just recover off Blood Lance, because as you can see on screen currently, Blood Lance just heals you for a whole ton. So it's not too big a deal. Sometimes you'll still lose attempts to that. You'll have to reset. Now, however, the two-headed dragon hits, for the max I've seen it hit for, is 6.9 thousand, and that wasn't even a crit. The damage can still vary wildly, so you can still survive it, but it can one-shot you, and it most likely will one-shot you. So how we deal with this now is what we've kind of done to mitigate is before we put one person on a statue, and what statue does is such that it makes them invulnerable to all damage, but the enemies will still target it, which is very important, because if you're mid jump animation and the enemy goes first, or the enemy goes even second, on the turn you're jumping, it'll always try to target the statue, because it's the only valid target currently. If you don't have the statue, once you land, it'll just hit you instead, and that's kind of bad. So before we only had one statue, now we add two more statues, so that gives us a 75% chance if we don't win the speed tie and we land before the enemy hits us, then we can still, or I guess actually it's if we don't jump in time before the enemy attacks, we still have a chance to, we have like a, 3 times better chance of surviving the attack, because it'll hit one of the statues potentially.
Yeah, so like the answer to being one shot isn't like, oh well that's okay, I can, grind past it, get more HP maybe. It's just, I'll give myself more of a chance to not be hit.
Yeah, a number of us have tried routes to try to see if we can survive the hits, and it's just not really possible. You could technically do it if you go backline and use a shield, but the fight would be so incredibly slow that it's just not worth it.
At some point you got to throw your hands up into the air and be like, all right, well, we're doing this.
Yeah, sometimes you just gotta go fast and just accept that RNG is a part of the run.
Sometimes you gotta do it for the team. Well, thank you very much, Karma. It's been wonderful having you. Last question, as per, which Final Fantasy has the best main character?
The best main character is Final Fantasy XIV, because we're all the best main character.
Final Fantasy XIV. I did wonder how long it was going to be until someone said that. I guess us. That's what I'll put. I shall put us for the best main character. Isn't that wonderful and wholesome? Okay, next up we have Final Fantasy XIII, and with me I believe I have MMM.
You believe correctly.
Oh, I believe correctly. Wonderful. How are you this evening?
I'm okay. I wish the weather was not so hot, because I'm sweating and I have not done a bunch of jamming before the pre-show, so that's always nice. I want winter back.
I want winter back as well, but it's fine. Apparently we only have one more heat wave, and then it's all magically over. I can't wait.
Joy.
I don't know if I can say the same for you, but I hope it's true as well. Anyway,
I hope so.
Is there any team you want to be landing up on?
Honestly, any team that has me on it is the best team, so I don't particularly care.
Oh, fantastic then, because you're on Team Mog.
Oh, that's great.
On Team Choco, and Kaya rounds out for Team Tonberry.
I'm actually completely fine with Morg, because last year I was on Team Morg and we won.
Oh.
And also, I couldn't help but notice as well that we've got a bunch of 13 runners in Morg so far, so I'm fine with this.
Okay, alright, well, proud to rep the Team Mog, we love that. So, first question. FF13 it's a very optimized game at this point. I feel like every time I look back, there's just more and more and more optimizations. However, since the last relay, there are now two new dodge approaches. What are they?
Okay, so 2 things about that actually. I'm going to cautiously say it's 2.5 new dodge approaches, and also they're not like new, but they are newly implemented into the route. So one thing that I should note, so we have like overworld encounters that you have to like actively try to dodge instead of the random encounters that most other Final Fantasy games would have. And to get past some of those, we use a thing that we call the Deceptisol, which makes us invisible to enemies. So we use the Deceptisol, go past the enemies, and then cancel back on them to get the Deceptisol back. And that costs like 10 seconds to do that. So something that we do more and more now is we try to take some Deceptisols out of some of the dodges. And one of the ones that we did that for recently, since the last relay, would be the bird elevator. And it's a very tricky dodge. There's a specific approach that you have to do it without a decept, because there's this one yellow bird that spawns more or less in the middle of the elevator, and you have to just run the circles around it, and you just have to hope that he doesn't run. There's two other birds that you have to dodge at the same time, but those are fine if they move, because they have like an attack animation. And when the enemies do an attack animation, normally they just slow down and you can just dodge them. Or you can continue running forward and they stop or something. And the thing with the yellow bird is, you do not want him to run, because it doesn't have an attack animation, it will always just run straight into you. And this bird elevator has like a massive time loss if you fail to dodge, which is like 30 or 40 seconds or something, which is why even though we had this approach, we didn't usually do it. But I have I figured out like an approach that worked for this, with like a specific movement. So now it's like consistent enough that we go for this in runs. So since it's similar in nature, I'll mention the other half dodge that I want to talk about, which is the party swap Emphas Baena, which is outside of Tyson's Tower. That's something that we've also known about for a while, and we found one more benefit, which is that if you party swap exactly once, then you have Snow in slot 2 for Titan, which is the fight that we do right after this dodge, basically, and that saves like 2 to 3 seconds on top of that. So instead of decepting that, we save 10 seconds for not having to cancel the decept. Takes like 2 to 3 seconds to swap the party, but then we also save that time back on Titan again. So the reason I say it's only half a dodge approach is that it's not very consistent. So I noticed that for Zero, for example, this works more or less consistently. But for me and Kaya, I don't think either of us have gotten it to be consistent yet. I know I haven't, and I've really tried because I want the time save, but it's just a thing that's kind of specific PC jank, because this port is very weird. So the other dodge approach I would like to mention as well now is the VH&T phase. So before, what we would used to do is like the party swap. Different kind of party swap there, because what we want to do is to have Snow run into the Vernal Harvester, which is one of the enemies in that dodge, because they're like both blocking the way. And we want Snow to just collide with it and move it out of the way. What we do now, however, instead, is just phasing through the enemies, which on the last relay we already did on a Vatala that is on the bridge in Erba. And we do like more or less a similar approach, so we just run into the Vernal Harvester with Vanille, and then we just go straight and take the left turn immediately, and hopefully, if we do it correctly, it's basically just a pure skill-based dodge, and it doesn't have like the RNG factor that with the party swap dodge. Sometimes it could happen that Snow just doesn't do his job, because he's an idiot, and with this we just take that complete RNG factor out of the equation. Outside of these, there's like a few more micro optimizations on some of the dodges, but these are like the main things that have changed recently.
Well, that's how crazy optimized FF13 is then. Like, these optimizers you've said essentially save 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Seconds.
Yeah, the big ones save 10 seconds. Some of the other more micro optimizations save 5 seconds maybe, or less even.
And also you talk about like the half of a dodge being inconsistent. Like, what are the percentage chances roughly in your reckoning? Like, how consistent is it in terms of a percentage? Basically what I'm asking.
Well, for Zero or Kaya, I'm not entirely sure because I don't have their PCs, but for me it's like 10%, so I can't realistically go for it, unfortunately.
Okay,
I think for Zero, at least it's a lot more consistent.
Oh, okay.
Because it's just a case of PC that's making a huge difference for this game, because we run this on PC. On PS3, it would work for nobody, because on PS3 it just doesn't work.
Oh, yeah, okay, 10% is not a chance I would ever like to take. My goodness.
Yeah, definitely not.
And like, obviously, we're talking about all of these like micro optimizations. I assume that then, as a result, 13's fights must have become like harder to execute, like tighter timing, like all of these things. How many of these fights can now like go wrong as a result, and how much of that is out of your control?
I would really say that most fights can go wrong. Like anything past chapter 4 maybe can go wrong in some way, shape, or form. Like even in the early game, the fights can go wrong. Like to be fair, in the early game, if something goes wrong, you lose like 2 seconds. Later in the run, something goes wrong, you can die. And it is true that a lot of the fights are very difficult to execute, even like in the very early chapters. Like, for example, the first Manasvin, or not the first one, but like the last fight against the Manasvin that we do in Chapter 3, we already have to stagger cancel moves there, which is really precise, so that's already difficult to execute. We also have to do a stagger cancel for Dreadnought in Chapter 4. It is true that a lot of them are difficult to execute, but it's mostly within your control at that point. It gets a bit hairier from Chapter 11 onwards, when we really start to rely a lot more on Vanille and on her debuffs. We especially want her to land Deprotect and Imperil on basically every fight that she's in. Except like Chapter 12, I guess, because you can't debuff the Proud Clads, but yeah, that's just one example of a point that a fight can fail. So you're seeing Bart 3 on screen now, for example, so if Vanille doesn't land Deprotect and Imperil before you get to doing Cold Blood and before his ultima, and then do Cold Blood, you have to do like a backup that may or may not work, and it's also really precise. Which, to be fair, you can just get it right. You know, you can just do the backup correctly. But even then, it's rather RNG whether you get it or not. Because she can still just decide to still not land Deep Tech or Imperil. So that's something that can go wrong. Something else that can go wrong, and shout out to Kaya for this, you can die on the 2 bombs in Chapter 4, which is literally just 2 generic mobs, but if they both immediately self-destruct, then you're just dead. And Kaya complains a lot about this happening to him. I've had one of those recently as well. It's always very fun.
Oh, goody. So
another favorite of mine as well was for Bart 3, which you were just seeing before. Sometimes he likes to do his laughter, and then your entire party is on low HP, but you never die to it. But what he can do after that is he can just do 4 lasers, all of them on fast, which should be like a 1 in 81 chance, and party leader death means game over. And that one tends to happen to me a lot, and I don't like it, but that's just the game.
So yeah, the main takeaway is that this is, as we all knew, a hyper-optimized run where you have to execute very fast and very well, and even then, sometimes, if you do execute very fast, very well, to the best of your ability, sometimes Vanille just won't land her debuffs, and tragedy and Peepo sadness ensues.
Yeah. Or people can hard target Thaz, something that also happens frequently on Proudclad 1, for example. So, yeah, it's a bit rough. Like, the fights are hard in general, and when things like this happen, it's just salt in the wound sometimes.
Oh man, FF13, I am eventually going to learn all of the Final Fantasies, and I can guarantee you, Final Fantasy 13 will be last.
Yeah, it's admittedly a very difficult one to learn, but also very worth it. I've been on this for like a year and a half, more or less, and it's really rewarding to get good at it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you very much for coming on, MMM. I appreciate it. Now, the last question I've asked everyone. It's your turn to answer. Which Final Fantasy has the best main character?
All right. So earlier on, Nikki wasn't going to give it to 13 for Lightning, but it's up to me to represent my game, which apparently nobody has done yet. But yeah, my turn. Yeah, I have to give my vote to 13 for our amazing queen, Vanille.
Vanille. Alright, well, thank you very much, MMM. FF13 Vanille. The first runner to say their own game. The first runner. We're nearly halfway through. Alright. Anyway. Wonderful. Okay, I believe next we have Final Fantasy X, and with me I have the delightful Foxy Jira.
Wait, I'm here?
You're here. Hello.
Hello.
How are you on this fine afternoon?
I'm well. Could be better, but hey, it's not every day that I get to talk to Chris.
I don't know if that's true. I feel like we talk fairly frequently, but what do I know? Is there any team that you're looking to land on in particular?
Which team do you think?
I think you're either going to want to be on Tonberry or Mog, so you can be with Zik.
Oh, Zik's on Mog again? Ooh, that's a tough one. I would love to be on a team with Zik, but also I do love me some Tonberries, so... tough question. Probably Tonberry just because my first relay was on Tonberry as well, and we won. So it'd be kind of do another run back. That'd be pretty cool.
Okay, well, I genuinely do not remember what team you're on, so this is going to be a surprise to me. Let's find out.
You're just lying to make me feel better, so I'm not mad at you later.
Foxy Jira is on Team Mog. He gets the Zik team up. Hiroshige on Team Chocobo, and Nightbox for Team Tonberry.
Hey, you know what that means though is I've done the cycle. I was Tonberry, Choco, and then Mog this time around.
You've hit the trifecta. We went through earlier. It took Nikki 300 to 400 years. It's taken you 3 years.
In a row.
In a row. Good job. Good job.
I'm so happy for myself.
So, Final Fantasy X. We're doing something different this year. We're going to be doing cutscenes and Minip, but every runner is going to be doing a different seed. They're all going to be doing different Minips as a result. They'll be sent their seed 2 days beforehand, and they'll get that long to try and Minip as much of it as they can. How much can be Minipped in
Honestly, it's a bit of a curious thing because I think it depends on the run with how you want to take what risks you want to take. I would think that it should, for somebody that is familiar with doing Minips, really 2 days is more than enough time to basically Minip the whole game. So you have a general outline of everything that you want to do. Maybe not every single exact action is going to go as you would like. Thank you, Final Fantasy X, for just being the game that it is. But really, at the end of the day, hopefully you should be able to Minip the whole thing. I know Hiroshige does a little bit of a more interesting, different route than I think everybody else typically does for the run that's listed on speedrun.com and those sorts of things. So it'll be very interesting to see what he can kind of pull out with his lightning dodges route.
Yeah, it's always a joy to see Hiroshige run. I'll elaborate a little bit, I guess, for those that don't know. So there's the standard FF10 route. You go through bonking your normal way, Bahamut, Gur. And then Hiroshige, who, per my understanding, knew that towards the end of the game that you kill things with Bahamut, but didn't know the route himself and wanted to come up with his own, and that culminated in him doing 50 lightning dodges in the Thunder Plains, so he can get his hands on 3 strength spheres. So it's
bold and
very
brash.
Bold and brash. I've tried doing this strat. Without practice, I'm just a little too old. My reflexes aren't there. Have you tried?
No, actually, I know there's a spot in the Thunder Plains where you can kind of I guess spawn lightning strikes every time you run forward, which makes it easy. But I just don't trust. I'm old too. At this point, I don't trust my eyes anymore. You never know what you're gonna get. And lightning dodges. I'd rather just win Blitzball. I know everybody hates Blitzball, but I feel way better about Blitzball than I do lightning dodges. I'll just be open about that one.
That's fair. So you've mentioned that you should be able to just Minute the full game. How much is it that you intend to do?
I intend to at least to get up to Wendigo is probably the main thing. That's really, I think, where a lot of runs. I don't say go to die. That's not the right word. Go to just toss you back into the RNG fix that we've tried to really get away from in the run. Simply because you don't know who Wendigo is going to target, if Wendigo is going to miss, and how many times you're going to have to take a death. So, from my understanding, our good friend Crimson Inferno has basically found a few seeds that we'll be using so that each of them should be relatively level alongside the playing field in terms of encounters, how prevalent the no encounter armor is in the run, so that we can manip it, because there are some seeds essentially that where it's not impossible, but it's highly unlikely that you're going to be able to get a no encounter armor with within a reasonable amount of time, essentially. Yeah, I think Wendigo is probably about usually as far as I get when I'm testing out new seeds, because I like to do that in my free time, because I'm a little bit of a nerd about that stuff, but I'm definitely not as well familiar because of that at the end of the day.
Yeah, and to be clear about something you also mentioned in there, these seeds have been found by Crimson, and they're easier seeds to manip to get no encounter armor with that aren't that aren't going to kill you at some point.
Yeah.
So he found these 3 different seeds that myself and Grey Fox also vetted a little bit. So there shouldn't be any disasters, hopefully, but all it takes is one person to miss one thing, which isn't a hard thing to happen, and then
and I think that's why I'm a little bit happier that we're doing full game runs, which it throws a little bit into the mix. I think a lot of people have been expecting the cutscene remover stuff as of late, but trying to manip on the fly with cutscene remover and still trying to go fast is very tough. A lot of the times it's thankfully now we have cutscenes to kind of just give us time to relax, manip. We can take drop something. We can take the the first few 10 minutes of cutscenes to basically plan out all the way through Kilika, essentially. So that's the biggest nice thing about all of it, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. I've been doing some CSR runs recently on random seeds, and getting no encounter armor is fairly difficult, and manipping the drops in order to get no encounter armor is quite difficult. Imagine doing that but also trying to do actions on top of that in CSR. Yeah. It would be incredibly difficult.
Yeah, and I think that's hopefully one thing I'll be able to do is try and manip actions if I can during the first portion of the game, because that is something else that we can do with tracking. So trying to maximize the amount of crits that we get and those sorts of things, and just those little tiny time saves you can kind of take over the course of the entire 8.5 to 9 hours essentially that we're shooting for.
So next question, do you have any wacky, wild ideas as to things you can do, as to things that potentially other runners could do that we may see in the runs?
Yeah, so one thing that I believe was done in the past, I don't know if Crimson does it now, was getting, if you get a special sphere drop from Seymour, there was a seed that I was looking at where I basically, my steals from Anima didn't line up as I expected, but I could get, basically, I would only get 3 silence grenades instead of the 6 that you want, but Seymour would also possibly drop a special sphere, so I could, during the Force Zoo encounter, just go in and use Give Titus Steal and then steal from the zoo, so that I'm immediately back on the amount of grenades that I need, and I get also steal as many times as I need to make sure that I'm not too far back on the tracking, essentially. So that's the one thing I've got in my mind right now. Otherwise, there's not really too much with, if you want to be safe with the route, that's usually something that's not done, but it could be just in case something a little catastrophic does go wrong.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Thank you for being here, Foxy. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Same question that everyone's gotten. Which Final Fantasy has the best main character?
Well, I think you're gonna get. It's gonna be the first 2 for 2. So I'm gonna say 10 as well, because you get to pick between 2 depending on how you view it.
Okay, fair enough. Final Fantasy X. I'm glad that we got at least one for that, because for those that don't know, my favorite Final Fantasies are FF6 and then followed by 9 and 10. So not seeing 10 or 6 represented is killing me a little bit inside, but that's okay. Right. Now, one of the main pieces of feedback I got last year from Maelstrom and Sereth, but mainly Maelstrom, was that no matter what I say, we're going to do a break this year. Yeah. Somewhat enforced, but probably for the best. So the break's going to be about 10 minutes, but Sereth has something magical that he prepared for us during the break. I shall put that on, and I shall see you again in about 10 minutes. Have fun, everybody.
And we're off. If I'm not mistaken, Shug has the wrong disc in the game.
Oh my goodness.
No.
Whoopsie daisies.
Shug being Shug has.
Oh no. It's okay. I'm giving a handicap out. That's all.
This is a self-sabotage right here.
No, this is all part of the manipulation.
He's that confident.
Very nice. I didn't even need the extra throwing item. Why did I light this?
That is a good question. Are we going Black Hood
I unlight
strats?
that, don't I?
You do.
What the heck am I doing? Why would I light that? Am I crazy?
Because you really want the Black Hood.
Yep. Black Hood
And
strats.
save
for the
money,
win.
I guess. I just want to correct the kills real quick. I got because I have Ice Brand, I got 3 kills in the first fight, and then I got 5 in the second.
That's 8.
That's 8. Yep. I'm tired.
That's good. The ninja could still die to part of the team, I think.
Particle beam, yeah, but we are so close. No, but the attack does kill the red mage. It hits the worst person.
It's possible, but don't.
What's the strat? I think he's just he's throwing Chocobo Russ. I'm hoping it's enough. It's enough. It's enough. Team up, go! Oh
GG.
my lord! They all came down so close right towards the end. I cannot believe how close they all were. Oh my goodness!
Clutch finish.
Why did I light the wrong one?
Oh boy, you also lit the wrong candle in the same room as Kara did. Good.
Also going for Black Hood strats.
Also going for Black Hood.
I'd like to reiterate to chat, if you want to learn this wonderful game, there are guides on speedrun.com.
Ooh, Shug got the T-Rex. Oh, that's amazing.
Of course, Shug.
Oh, and not the fast escape. Not the unlucky. He went.
Yeah, he unfortunately got the good luck by escaping.
God.
Darn. Oh, instant second battle. That's so unlucky.
Yeah,
That's another
very
T-Rex.
unlucky.
It's another
T-Rex. Oh wow.
That's another
Me or my.
I've
Oh my
literally
God.
never seen that happen to anyone or myself.
I've never seen the double T-Rex.
Yep, that's a first for me. I've never seen that either.
In these kinds of relay races where you have lots of games, it's kind of a problem where you always end up just commentating on the person who's in the lead because they're the one showing the new thing first. We managed to bypass that in Final Fantasy X by just not talking about any of the runs that are
I almost jinxed myself and did the thing that Kara did there. Black Hood candle. Not gonna lie. I almost
It would have been like a clean sweep of lighting the wrong candle. The other two both did it.
Or wait, or did I write them?
You did it!
You did.
Oh my God! What is with you guys?
One and not the right one.
Oh, I'm supposed to write.
Oh
the
my
right
God.
one. Oh my goodness.
Okay. Anyone watching this playback on YouTube using this to learn the game, you do not light that candle. Just because all 3 of these guys did it does not mean that is actually a strat.
It's actually RNG manipulation.
Yeah,
okay,
it
so
is. You
I
guys don't
wanna
listen
hear
to Swanzik. He hasn't run the game in forever. Okay, he doesn't know.
And here we go. Mutski begins his search for the. He got it!
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Oh, baby.
Of course.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my god.
We're going to get an
I
early
honestly.
Whoa.
That is so unlikely. That's so insanely unlikely.
It's chances of him getting that. Like we said, it's 1 in 512 or something.
The end. Wow.
The end.
And here we go.
It's such a cool spell though, like
What a memer.
I do enjoy seeing it.
Yeah, you don't get to see it very often.
Nice.
I should be dead anyway.
Should be.
Don't you need like Humolis for the J-Life strat build later?
Yes.
No, there's a backup for that. There's a backup for that, yeah. Oh, Aerith got the killing blow! No way!
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Oh my god!
Oh boy. Oh, it's an ambush. Oh god.
Probably fine.
Yes.
No,
Tidus survived.
yeah, Tidus
Oh no, he
petrified.
didn't.
No, he didn't.
No.
No, he didn't. Oh, but found the
Moron.
escape.
Oh,
Found the
dear.
escape.
I don't think he's gonna get the chance.
Not like this.
Oh, 2 HP! He's 1,000 2 HP and escapes! Let's go! Oh my goodness, okay.
And we're not
Oh,
even at
boy.
Thunderplanes.
Oren had 2 HP and a dream, and he manages to escape. Welcome back, everybody, to the pre-show. I am still Chrysisophus Davro the Ninth, otherwise known as Christonarian. Hello, hello. I hope you enjoyed the collection of clips put together by the wonderful Sareth. And next up, we are on Type O. And I believe I've been joined by Das Pharaoh.
Oh, indeed. Hello.
Hello, hello. How are you?
I'm good. Just chilling. How are you? How has the pre-show has been going? Amazing.
Thank you, thank you. I'm doing well now. Yeah, I splashed some water on my face. I had a bit to drink.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly I'm almost refreshed, you know?
That's
almost refreshed. Nearly. Right.
And we're gonna stay cool thanks to the video you're going to show, I think.
Are we just? That made me giggle. For those of you in chat, there's going to be about a minute or two of payoff for that. Anyway, let's reveal the teams. Crimson Inferno on Team Mog, Foxy Salsado on Team Choco, and Dasfo rounds out Team Tonbury. How do you feel about the Tonbury?
Happier than I was last year, for sure.
Happier than you were last year. Alright, you know what? We take happier than last year.
Last year I was just disappointed. This time I can actually sharpen my knife.
Brilliant.
I have a few.
Oh,
I have a few in case you don't know.
Well, how else can you cut down the enemies in speedrunning? Of course you have. Right.
Yes. We do use a very sharp knife also.
For those that don't know, I believe you're a veterinarian before people get the wrong idea.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. Right.
All right.
So let's talk.
I am.
Oh, go on.
Yeah, let's talk about Type 0. So it's a very interesting game. It's definitely one of the darker entries Square has ever put forward. It does pretend it's a school game like Japanese tropes and whatnot, but at the same time before it's a game about the school life, whatever, it's a game about war, and it's very clear that it's a game about war, putting teenagers in the front lines and then exposing all of the consequences of those decisions, and it's brutal. Even if you've never, it's not an easy game to play or get into, but if you do manage to, like, the payoff is incredible. It's such a good game.
Yeah, no, I had no idea what the game was about, so that is a big surprise to me. My goodness. All right, well, one thing I do know about Typo, however, is that there are summons that are used quite frequently. Like, how powerful are the summons in Typo?
Yes, so the summons are so powerful that we're gonna use them, and by them I mean her, because there's only really one summon we're gonna use. We're gonna use her for, like, anytime we can get them. So the run, earlier we were talking about this, the run can be divided into 3 parts. The first third of the run is when you don't have summons yet, so you actually have to use your class members, which are 14 or 13 if I'm not mistaken. No, I don't know the exact number. Then you unlock summons and you just abuse the fuck out of her. And lastly, you can't use summons for the last dungeon of the run. So that's what's gonna be. How are summons so broken? Knockfrost was doing summons while everyone else was just doing the classmates, and she realized that the experience multiplier on summons is, like, stupid. It's ×5 or ×10. I think it's ×10. It's that insane. So when you get Shiva, which is the summon we're going to use, when we get Shiva, the class is around level 12, and Shiva is given to you at level 23, and on the first fight he uses, she instantly jumps to 24, and this is a trend. She just
Wow.
gains levels much faster than anyone else, so she's always going to be over-leveled compared to everyone else, including the enemies. That's why we use her for everything. The other really big thing about Shiva is that her movement speed is very fast, because you are given 3 default summons. Shiva, Ifrit, and Golem. Golem is bad, we don't talk about Golem. And Ifrit is very slow moving. Ifrit actually hits harder than Shiva, but on his normal field movement speed is actually really slow, which is why we go to Shiva, even if Shiva is much harder to control. Because Type 0 has a mechanic that you can increase the speed up until 3 times the default. And Shiva has Ice Physics. So Ice Physics combined with a ×3 speed multiplier means she's almost impossible to control. So, a big part of the run is managing how fast your speed multiplier is going, so you can properly control her during fights.
Yeah, so I have heard the rumors of just how difficult Shiva ends up being, but I didn't realize that she came with her own set of ice physics. How long does it take to become accustomed to controlling Shiva without, like, slamming into every wall?
Man, it took me some time to get used to it. And I'm not as good as Crimson, I'm probably not as good as Foxy, but I'm gonna try my best to make sure I don't run into anything I shouldn't.
Okay. So, you mentioned the summons are very powerful, but obviously you also mentioned that you can't always use summons. There are places you can't summon. What do you do when you can't summon?
Okay, so as powerful as Shiva is, because she is an ice summon, all of our attacks are ice elemental. So in the clip that you're seeing, we're not actually controlling Shiva. We are controlling Jack and Kater, and that's because enemies in this ice stage absorb or block ice, some of them at least. So at this point we use Jack instead. Jack is the second strongest class 0 member. The one with the highest attack is Sunk, but Sunk sucks, so we just use Jack instead. He has innate crit rate when he attacks from behind, and his attack is really, really good. So we use him try attack enemies from behind, and Aura, which gives us double attack, to just try and deal with whatever enemies Shiva can't kill. And then there's the last part of the run where you can't use summons because the game blocks you out of them, which is Trials. And Trials is very interesting. It was much harder on the original version of the game. On the original version of the game, the enemies in Trials were average to your party level, and people actually complained that this made Trials extremely difficult. So for the HD version, they made the enemy levels the party average anyway, and then reduced by 10. So we only use Kater and Jack, and everyone else is only ever brought forward as a sacrifice for Shiva. We want to maintain party levels as low as possible, so that on Trials we are fighting essentially level 1 and level 2 enemies, which make Trials very easy, but not devoid of RNG. There is still RNG, you can still get screwed over, but they are much easier than they were on the original version.
Okay, so it's just another loss for scaled leveling, unfortunately. Yeah. It's always the answer. How do you beat scaled leveling? Well, it's fine, just show up at level 1, and what's the worst that could happen?
So the interesting thing about Trials is there's many different Trials. There's, I think, 18 total. It's around 20. And each of them have a condition to be cleared, like survive for 2 minutes, kill all these enemies in less than 5 minutes, don't get damaged, only use magic, only use physicals. They're very interesting, actually, and they're my favorite part of the run. And then, of course, it finishes with the final boss, which is not exactly a fight. It's super interesting, and the music that plays there is really, really hype.
Okay, so when you say it's not exactly a fight, obvious question, what is it?
It's a gimmick. The final boss for Type 0 is a gimmick.
So, like, if I could ask, what is the gimmick?
Because you can't die on the final boss.
Ah. Okay.
So for us, the only important thing is taking care of it as fast as possible. But if we were just to drop our controllers, like nothing would happen because you can't die on the final fight. It's super cool. It's very, very cool though.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be the only Final Fantasy to have like a. I guess like it's essentially just auto life. Like towards the end, FF10 also has like auto life after you defeat BFA, and then congratulations, you're running towards victory. You've got the halos over your head. You've done it. Now just go boop the lads over the head.
Yes.
All right. Well,
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Well, thank you very much, Pharaoh. It's
no problem. Always a pleasure to be here.
I'm low-key looking forward to like Typo, just because I know so little about it, and the only runs I've had, the only runs I've watched are like you guys doing it, but fairly late-ish for me, so I never like pay 100% attention. So whilst I know things, I also know absolutely nothing. So I can't wait to actually properly learn it.
It's interesting to see these really obscure games because Typo is lauded as a non-marathon safe run. It absolutely is. So it will be very interesting to see how each one of us will properly manage all of these big problems.
All right. And now, the last question. Which Final Fantasy has the best main character?
Crisis Core, Zack Fair is the best boy.
Crisis Core. I mean, if I had to bet my house on something that Pharaoh was going to guess, it would not have been Crisis Core. You know the problem with putting Final Fantasy CC in as a vote? That could be so many things. There are too many Final Fantasy games that begin with CC, basically. Alrighty. Well, that was pleasant. Next up, we are doing Final Fantasy VII, and I believe we have the lovely Dill Wingo with us.
Hey, how's it going? Yep.
How is it going? How is your afternoon?
It's pretty good. How about you?
It's going pretty well. I'm still feeling refreshed from the break, so that's quite nice. I feel an amount of coolness still.
Right on.
Alright.
Hell yeah.
So for teams, we have RJ on Team Mog, Zeal on Team Choco, and Dash Retro rounds out a Team Tonberry. And let me ask you. So, there are, I believe, new IGT manips that are now like viable for Final Fantasy VII. Do you want to take me through like what that is and what they are?
Yeah, so I don't know if they were implemented last year, but there's a few new manips that were optimized in like the recent, like I'd say in 2023. One of them being leaving Costa del Sol, so you can actually make it so, unfortunately you can't do a 0 encounter manip, but you can make it so you get consistently 1 encounter. Just a simple IGT manip, and then there's also some over-the-shoulder camera movement, which that's been being implemented a lot more on the world map in general. So you'll see in FF7, if you press L2 or R2 on the world map, instead of having an overhead view, it'll be like kind of like a shoulder view of Cloud. And we actually figured out that this type of movement on the world map is actually slightly faster, and you have the potential to skip several battle checks. So that's being implemented in the new Costa to Corel manip, but again, it's only 1 encounter. We also use it in like the current manips we do, like Midgard to Chocobo Ranch, the Ice Cave to Icicle Inn, and a few other places. Another big one that was crafted last year was the Tiny Bronco to Core Manip. So after you fight Palmer, you get the Tiny Bronco, and we actually found out that you can do a very specific setup with the Tiny Bronco and with good movement, and you can actually make it so you get no encounters from the Bronco to Coral, because it's a really long traversal. And then some of the encounters you can get can just cost you a lot of time. That's probably one of the harder manips that's been crafted recently. And then there's also, I don't know if it's going to be done in the relay, but Brutal Speed and Zeal are working on a Junon mini game manip. So where you board the boat, leaving the Junon parade, you do a little mini game with the other soldiers to impress Rufus, and you can get anywhere from several moves to up to 20 something, and it's honestly the more movements you have to do, it wastes more time. So I think they're working on a manip that makes it so you get a consistently low number of move set when you're doing the the Rufus minigame. I don't know what you even call it, but yeah, no. So yeah, there's several manips that have been crafted and implemented in the last year or so. I think those are the biggest ones I can think of on the top of my head. There's the no long range route also, but I mentioned that to you before. It's I don't know if anybody's gonna go for that in the relay, just 'cause it's very risky, you know.
Yeah. So what I did want to ask about, I know a little bit about RNG in certain games, but what I find odd is normally world map encounters work differently to field encounters. So that's to say, when you're in a dungeon, when you're at a location, something like that. Is that not the case in FF7, or are they still very separate, but you can still just manip the world map encounters in FF7 anyway?
Yeah, world map encounters in FF7 are way different than the ones on the hostile screens and normal dungeons. They work completely differently. It has a lot to do with your danger value and several other variables. Whereas the main encounters you'll get on hostile screens in FF7 will be based on step route, so routing the step route and routing your steps accordingly, and your fractions. But yeah, no, on the world map they're completely different than normal hostile screens in FF7. So yeah.
Damn, that's wild. So also, what another follow-up question I wanted to ask: just how optimized? I think we mentioned a little bit earlier, FF13 is crazy optimized. So all of these tiny things they then go adding into the run are 5 seconds, 10 seconds, maybe very optimistically 15 whole seconds. Is that also now the case for FF7? Because you're talking about, a new manip they're going to put in. So you have to move less during, the mini game where you move to the right, cock your gun, Yeah. Is it that crazy optimized nowadays that is something that you have to go for to get really good times?
I'd say so, yeah. I think it's starting to. It's not. I wouldn't say no slots is super optimized right now, but it's starting to get to the point where these little manips are going to matter, especially if you're trying to go for a world record. And then on top of the no long range route, it's like I said, I wouldn't say FF7 no slots is super optimized, but it's definitely getting there in terms of the current potential of the route. I know the current world records is 6:31:49. I think sub 6:30 is possible, but it's you would need a pretty solid run. 6:30 is definitely doable. In fact, I mean, Morningcraft is on world record pace as we speak, and he has less than an hour left. So hopefully he does actually get a new world record. That'd be really cool. But yeah, no, I'd say these little manips and these little strat optimizations that are being found, because we had the golden age of FF7 speedruns when we found column skip and Cosmo Canyon skip and guard skip. We had that big golden age period. And who knows, there could still be things that are yet to be found, but right now there's just a lot of micro optimizations, I'd say, that are being more worked on. But yeah, though, they definitely will matter for the future of the current state of the speedrun. Absolutely.
No, it's just great to hear when a speedrun has come so far that all of these tiny little things matter. You had all of these little things, and it's just a great showcase, Yeah,
I completely agree. FF7, for I mean, even with all the skips, a lot of stuff's stayed mostly the same, but there has been like optimizations and strat changes found over the years. And yeah, no, I mean, right now it's such a cool time to get into the run. And then this new no long range route. I wouldn't say new, but it's like now that it's actually being implemented, it's becoming meta. That's like it's a huge step for the the game changing of world record level. So it's really cool to see these especially these long Final Fantasy runs getting like these optimizations and seeing the change over the past few years is just incredible.
All right, well, thank you very much, Dill. It's been a pleasure talking about FF7. Now, the last question before I boot you out. Which Final Fantasy has the best main character?
I'm biased for FF7, like by far. I can't say anything more than I'm extremely biased. I love FF7 and the remake series, Rebirth series, whatever. But yeah, I'd say 7. But I have extreme bias, so take my word with a grain of salt.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Dill, for that. And that is another vote towards FF7. So FF7 clearly out in the lead at the moment. It has 3 votes. Every other game has 1. Every other game. Alrighty then. Right, well, we'll move on to the next game, Final Fantasy XVI. So, fair warning about this. I will give you the warnings now. We are going to talk about FF16, but we're not going to talk about anything story-wise. We're mostly going to be talking about gameplay. The first video featured will be something that was included in the demo, and then the second half of the video that we'll be playing will be applied much later into the game. But it's not too spoilery. But if you still haven't played FF16, now's the time to come back in 10 minutes. Yeah, all right, cool. Anyway, FF16. I believe I am here with Rainbow Unicorn Phoenix. Is it okay if I just call you Rainbow?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. Fantastic. How are you doing this morning? I would believe it would be for you.
Yes, just past 6 a.m. Yeah, excited, very, very happy and honoured to be selected, and also for 16 to be chosen. So yeah, we'll definitely try and keep it spoilery free as much as possible. So because I know a lot of people want to do it, and Squeenix seems to be dragging their heels on the PC port.
We'll get to play it at some point, I'm sure. Well, it is great to have you. Let's reveal the teams. Pete Swanson on Team Mog. Team Choco has Rainbow, and Angel Cal makes out a Team Tonbury. Was Team Choco the team you were hoping to end up on?
I actually do like the Team Choco because it's quite apt because we do use Chocobos quite a bit in the run, so I'm quite happy with that. Call the squeaky chickens.
Fantastic. Well, that is great to know. Everyone has been happy with their team so far. I wish it was like this every year. It's brilliant. So FF16 is a very open game just in terms of the map. How important is movement in a game like FF16?
Yeah, because the run is, 7.5, 8 hours long on average. About half of that time we're moving between different fights and boss fights, so instead of just running around, the game does give us a bunch of abilities that weren't necessarily intended for movement, but we can use them for movement. So, as you can see that we're using like Phoenix shifts, there's air dodges, there's lunge movements, etc. So we use a lot of those combinations to try and speed up our movement when we can't necessarily run, or until we actually get the Chocobo that we need to do for movement later in the game. And there are certain things such as like fight manipulations that we do on the the main map areas that we can do to speed up, but it comes with like a bit of a risk reward kind of factor that if you mess up movement, there's a stumble animation which takes ages. It feels like a lifetime for Clive to recover from it. So whilst it is fast movement, it's very, very precise as well, because just being in the wrong position, moving upwards on an upslope and using the wrong movement ability can mean that you're wasting 5 to 10 seconds just waiting for Clive to recover. And there's also like an auto-target ability as well when you're using things like that, where you could be going in a straight line, then all of a sudden an enemy spawns in and you're just zipping off in the wrong direction.
My goodness. So how long does it take to become used to the movement, if it is so risk-reward, if it is like as minute perfectionist as it is? How long does it take you to get used to it?
I can give you an answer when I actually finally perfect it myself, because I've been running this for about 6 months and I still make mistakes. And yeah, there's a bit of RNG in regards to where the enemies spawn as well, sometimes in movement. So sometimes, you know, you feel like you've got good movement, and then, you know, might be even what looks like a pixel out, and all of a sudden you're stumbling and you're questioning, going, why did I stumble? No, not fair game.
Oh my goodness, okay. So, we'll now get into, like, gameplay spoilers for a little bit on the bosses now. FF16 has HP and stagger gates. How do those work? Are they, like, more of a blessing? Are they a hindrance?
Yeah, so I'll talk about stagger for a little bit. So there is 2 gauges on mini bosses, and some of the more powerful mob enemies, where there's a will meter, as well as a HP, obviously, for the enemy. All of our attacks do a combination of HP and will damage. Some abilities do more will than HP damage, some do, you know, in inverse, etc. So with the will meter, you have like a half and a full meter. Well, once you hit the half meter, you half stagger the enemy, where they kind of like, you know, get stumbled and stagger a little bit, and then you got full stagger where they become like immobile, and then you can do a whole bunch of damage. So what we try and do is we try and utilize both as best as we can. You know, when the enemy's staggered, you get to do much more damage. There's like an increasing damage that you can do to it up to like 1.4, 1.5 times against the enemy. So we do want to try and get to stagger as much as we can, because the amount of damage you can do to a boss is really, really strong. Some bosses, though, have HP gates, which, you know, triggers the next phase of the fight. So either it's a quick time event cutscene, it's a particular move that they must, you know, use before the fight's over, etc. So we have to balance between the two. It's a blessing if you can manipulate it really well, because there are some situations where you can get the enemy to the HP gate but not get them into stagger, which is great because you move on to the next phase and then almost immediately stagger them into that second phase, so you can do a bunch of damage to them.
Okay.
But it can also be a curse, because we have a thing that I like to call a dumb stagger, where you're right at the HP gate and then you full stagger the enemy. And some enemies and some bosses, they cannot trigger the cutscene whilst they're in stagger, and that stagger can be 20 to 30 seconds long. So you're sitting around for 20 seconds doing nothing because you have to wait for the stagger to finish before you can actually go into the next phase of the fight.
Okay, so I guess the answer to the question is, are they a blessing or a hindrance? Is they are both, or they can be both.
Yes.
Yeah.
They can absolutely be both, and it's really, sometimes it's a bit unfair, because sometimes you feel like you've got it, and there's a really, really fine margin for a lot of bosses where the abilities that we use, they pretty much are exactly the same in terms of HP. It's just how you utilize them, and all of a sudden you can be like, I'm looking really good, and then all of a sudden you stagger the enemy, and you're like, well, I have to wait 25 seconds now until I can continue.
Oh, that is the dumbest of staggers, if you will. Anyway,
Mhm.
Also, FF16, now this is something I've heard about just from, like, existing around 16 runners. There's a fair bit of skill management across the run. Now, like, what is that? What does that entail?
Yeah, so there are around 30 different skills and abilities that we pick up, but we only have 6 slots available in it. We use slightly more than half of them throughout the entire course of the run, and all of the different abilities have their own, you know, benefits, pros, and cons to it. Some are really good at mob fights, you know, group encounters. Some of them are really good for solo boss fights, etc. And we definitely don't have enough ability points just to equip every ability and level them up and master them and manipulate them the way that we want. So a lot of them down to not only just ability point management, so we pick up accessories and we pick up items that will allow us to gain the ability points that we need to be able to level up the necessary abilities, but we also have to be very careful of which abilities we have active for the upcoming fights, because you can be in a situation where if you miss time and, you know, you have the wrong ability for the wrong fight, you could waste up to 3 minutes in a fight because you just don't have the right setup to be able to deal either, you know, especially with a group fight, having to deal with all the different enemies in the group fights, but even in single, you know, bosses and mini bosses, you can waste a minute, minute and a half because you don't have like really powerful high HP or high will damaging abilities that you can use to rinse through HP or will there. So a lot of that, you know, comes really, really important. And then out on top of it, we've got cooldowns for all the abilities. So there's also situations where you want to make sure you have the right abilities set up, but also available for certain fights. And if you misuse your abilities, you don't have it available because they're on cooldown. And you can really snowball or avalanche in sections of the game where it's fight after fight after fight, and just not having the right abilities at the right time means that you have to use backup abilities, and then they're not available for the next fight, and then you have to go for another backup strategy, and then they're not available for the next fight. So you can really avalanche it if you're just slightly on, and it can be just as simple as just having not the right ability equipped, not having the ability points to have the right ability because you missed picking up a certain item, or even just using an ability in the wrong spot can just really put you in a sort of out of position, and having to work on a backup strategy to get yourself back in line with where you need to go.
It sounds like a lot goes into this run. There's
It's also
a lot
still
to keep track of.
There is a lot to keep track of, and I think every runner has their own sort of pace notes that they check like every 2 minutes just to make sure, actually, do I have enough? Do I have this equipped correctly? Do I have this right set up here for this fight? Because you really don't want to get into those fights with the wrong abilities, but it's also still very, very new, so a lot of the route is still constantly changing. Like, I think we've gone through like 7 or 8 different ability setups in the past 2 months by itself, in terms of what abilities we want to use where and what's probably the best way to approach it. And obviously, yeah, we're still trying to find and maximize and, trying to get, the most optimization out of it. So it's still quite new and raw. We're quite happy where it is at the moment, but there's obviously still room for improvement. So we might find another thing that will make it a lot easier so we don't have to change abilities so often. But yeah, we'll see what that looks like in the future.
All right, well, that's been very fantastic to hear, very enlightening about FF16. I didn't know a whole lot about it, but I feel like I know more about it now.
Oh, awesome. It's going to be a lot of fun to showcase it off.
I am excited for it. Well, thank you very much. Right, so before I kick you out of the call, the same question I ask everybody. Which Final Fantasy has the best main character?
This is like asking which of my pets is my favorite. This has been a hard one. I do have to go with the boy band world tour Final Fantasy XV with Noctis, though. I absolutely have to.
Final Fantasy XV. Another game that has one singular vote, and at this minute FF7 is out in the lead, and frankly it's not close. All right, well, everyone in chat, you can now mention that the spoilers have finished. We are done with Final Fantasy XVI, and the spoilers will be over, at least until we get to 7 Rebirth. But until then, we have Final Fantasy Adventure, and I believe that I am joined by Vanny.
Why, yes, you are.
I am joined by Vanny. That is wonderful. How are you this afternoon?
I'm a little sad. The Olympics are ending, and I'm very much into that. So, but other than that, I am doing very well.
Yeah, I've also been watching an absolute ton of the Olympics, and I'm sad it's over. And it's gotten to the point where I have bought the previous Olympics game on Steam, just to keep the spirit going a little bit longer afterwards.
Well, I'm actually pretty hyped for the next Olympics because I actually live in Southern California, so I will likely make my way to some of the events in person, and I cannot wait for that.
Well, I mean, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. I hope it's a wonderful time. Anyway, we're here to do a team reveal for Adventure, and then I'm going to ask you some questions. The team for Adventure is Bowie is on Mog, Crow is on Choco, and Priya is on Tonberry. I think I've said Priya's name wrong, but I could be wrong. I
believe it's Prior, actually.
Prior? Wow, that French flag had me believing that was not the case. Okay, Prior it is.
So real quick about these about these 3 team members. Bowie is the current world record holder. His time, I believe, is a 157. Crow was right behind him. He has a 158, and then Priya is, I believe, is in third. It has a time just above 2 hours. And with the practice times that I saw these folks posting in preparation for this relay, these guys are really, really close. Like, their average times, probably there's a deviation of, like, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes. between them. So this is going to be, and here's the thing, Final Fantasy Adventure Warpless, a good time is going to clock in at just over 2 hours. So relatively short especially compared to some of these other runs, but these three are incredibly close. This is going to be a very, very exciting segment of this relay.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm already looking forward to it. I really look forward to things that are like very different from the norm. You know, like whilst I played pretty much every mainline Final Fantasy that is currently out, and I love the turn-based, I love some of the action RPG stuff, but this is very, very different to almost everything we'll see. What are its roots and like how did it become a Final Fantasy game?
Yeah, so this is kind of an interesting one for people that don't really know this game's backstory. This is actually the first game in the Mana series, but when it was being localized to the Western audience, Final Fantasy had already gained a lot of traction and was very successful as an RPG genre. So they decided to give this game the name Final Fantasy Adventure to play off the Final Fantasy popularity. Now, what makes this even more interesting is the fact that when this game was released, the PAL version of this game, or what was released in Europe, is called Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. So if that doesn't make anything too confusing for you, that's kind of part of this game's history here. Now, I see we're showing you some footage here from what is called the Medusa Cave in probably about the first. Oh, it was just called Mystic Quest. Okay, I'm sorry, never mind. So this is the Medusa Cave, and the reason why I wanted to showcase this part of it is because this is really where the game starts to get rather unforgiving and it can be very punishing here. But one of the things that helps us to mitigate this, and you see me doing it here quite a bit, is the fact that you can save anywhere and you can reload your game. And there's very little time loss there. Of course, it loses a lot of time if you do it over and over again like I am here. But what I'm doing in this room is a trick where I am saving and resetting. And when you do, the enemies spawn when you walk into a room, but also when you save and reload in a room, enemies will spawn in random places. So because I have no means to kill those mummies, what I'm doing is I'm walking to a certain point, saving, reloading, hoping that when I reload, the mummies aren't directly in my way, and I can walk right through them. Now, during the actual relay itself, I will expect that the runners are going to be saving quite a bit, or at least they should, or maybe they won't because they're that good. I don't know. I would recommend saving a lot because you can, and the act of saving only takes about 2 seconds or so. So ultimately, one save here and there isn't going to cost you a whole lot of time.
That's actually fascinating. I didn't think I've seen that in a game.
Yeah.
That is some very, very cool tech.
There's also some other tech too where there's actually a glitch very early on in the game where we kind of fudge with the value of the defense value of a helmet that you get in the first village to make it much stronger than it actually is, and that honestly carries you for about the first pretty much up until this cave, about the first 30 to 40 minutes of the run where everything is doing very little damage to you, and then all of a sudden it changes in a major way when you get to here, and it pretty much stays that way for the entirety of the run, where even if you are leveling up quite a bit, you're still going to get killed in 2 or maybe 3 hits by certain enemies. So it's and especially the bosses just do an absolute truckload of damage. So being able to save at any point, even in a room with the boss, is very handy.
Oh, okay. I think there is a lot more. There is a lot more going on here than I had initially seen. So pretty much all I've seen of this game is when I was gathering footage, and I said just a lot of you looking towards the sky as something tragically went wrong. Can a lot of things go wrong in this game?
Yeah, like I said, with how things can kill you in 1 or 2 hits, how enemies will teleport with zero warning and then all of a sudden appear like right under your feet. How there's some issues with collision detection where this gets to be really frustrating when it comes to some of the puzzles that you have to do, like pushing objects or frozen enemies onto switches on the floor. Yeah, it can get it can really mess with you. Like I was saying in warm-ups before we got live on here, of all the games that I've speedrun, and there are many, this one is probably the most frustrating to me as far as what I've run. Oh, speaking of frustration, I see we've now teleported now to the ice cave, which is another extremely punishing section of the game where you've got enemy, like here we go, like the little tornado enemies, those will take damage from the chain that I have equipped. Those floating eyeballs do not. Now I can switch to a weapon which damages the eyeballs, but it doesn't do damage to the little tornado guys. So it's just stuff like that when you get to this point of the game. Yeah, you see I save right here because I'm just barricaded in and I'm like, nope, I'm not about to, yeah, forget that. So yeah, gotta come here, switch to the star, kill these guys, switch back. All of this can really add up time-wise. So it can make it very challenging. Now, one thing that I do want to mention though, that is going to be very interesting for the relay is you're going to see two different routes when it comes to how these characters are being leveled. So, okay, so this is a great example. I'm leveling up here, and you've got 4 different choices for which stat you can level up. Power is basically your attack strength. Stamina increases your defense and your maximum HP. Wisdom increases your magic power as well as your maximum magic points. And then will, mostly what that does is that bar that's across the bottom of the screen. The higher your will, the faster it fills up. Now, the more of that bar that's full when you attack, the more damage it does, and when it's completely full, then, especially when you swing your weapon, it does a special attack, whether you either, dive with your sword, or your chain gets longer, or you throw your axe, or whatnot. So it does that. Now, what you're going to see Bowie and Pryor doing is they're going to be doing the power build, where with a few exceptions, maybe about a third of the way into the game, all they're going to level up is power so that they're going to do as much damage as possible. This is an example here in the ice cave. You see where I did a save and reset, and then as soon as I reloaded, I walked to the right across that ice tile as if it wasn't there. You get a frame of essentially clemency when you load up before it actually detects what's going on as far as what you're stepping on, and it allows, because normally if you were to step on that right tile of ice, you go sliding down, but because I did the save and reload, I can just walk across and save a lot of time there. Anyway, so and what you see me doing here in this run too is I'm doing the power build, where I'm putting as much as I can into strength or into my attack power so I can do as much damage as possible. Now what you're going to see Crow doing is he's doing the wisdom build, where he is going to take, with just a handful of exceptions, he is only going to level up wisdom, and he is going to be killing enemies using magic as opposed to physical attacks, because his physical attacks are going to be extremely weak. You get a fire spell maybe about 15 minutes or so into the run, and he is going to use that extensively. There's really 3 main attack magics. There's fire, and then lit, and then finally nuke. But fire by far is the one that gets the most use. But the interesting thing about that is that he has to be very judicious with the enemies that he kills, because he's got, you can swing your weapon as much as you want, but you only have a finite amount of magic points. So unless you have a way to restore them, you can essentially get it to the point where you basically can't do damage to enemies. Now, one thing that's important to note is that when you level up, it automatically refills your MP and your HP. So in many instances, he's relying on that MP refill on his level ups to allow him to continue to cast the magic that he needs to throughout pretty much the entire run. So you'll notice him, and if you listen to his commentary on any of his runs, he will specifically say, hey, this enemy is worth this much experience. I'm going to focus on, using his finite resources to kill those as opposed to other enemies where it's not worth as much. So kind of more interesting routing. There's a lot more. I'd say generally there's a bit more safety in his route, just because you can assault enemies from a distance, and a lot of them you one shot because your magic is just so powerful. But again, but the trade-off there is that you can run out of magic spells to cast, and then you're kind of dead in the water unless you either find a way to refill it or level up. So it's an interesting balancing act between the two, and it'll be fun to see that. And the really cool thing is that it's two completely different approaches to running the game, and yet the times between the very top between the folks like Bowie and Pryor, when it comes to their physical builds that they do and what Crow does, and I see Bowie here in chat saying that Crow is pretty much the only runner that does it. So that does the magic build, that is. So it's very unique, but the fact that it basically keeps pace entirely with the other strats is going to be really fun for people to watch, to see two varying approaches, taking very different routes to reach the finish line, hopefully at very close to the same time. Yeah, so notice here, I have 103 HP, and as I've accidentally made body contact with the boss twice, and I die instantly. Having 103 HP at this point of the game is actually a decent amount, but game doesn't care. It just, you touched a boss, you're dead. That's just how this is. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was saying earlier how I'm very excited when there are several runners who are all doing something different. So yes. I'll be very excited to see this run. Thank you so much for showing up and talking about Adventure, Bunny. I appreciate it.
Of course.
I've ended every one of these by asking what Final Fantasy has the best main character?
Well, I would have to say Final Fantasy XII, because, I mean, everyone loves Baltier, right?
Everyone does love Balthier. Thank you so much. Balthier is the leading man, along with Fran and Bosch, the real main characters of Final Fantasy XII. That is another unique vote for another Final Fantasy, though. We've had 3 votes for Final Fantasy VII, and from there, we've had 1 vote for 4, 9, 8, 13, 2, Trading Card Game, 14, 13, 10, Crisis Core, 15, and 12. It looks like 7 is very much running away with it. Alrighty. Well, we got to learn a lot about a game that I didn't know much about. But the next game, I do know a little bit more about. It's Final Fantasy VI. With me, I have... Would it be fair to say Mr. Final Fantasy VI?
I feel embarrassed every time you say that, but I'll roll with it.
Yeah, you feel embarrassed. I'm sure you'll be okay. Hello, Diane. How are you this afternoon?
I'm doing great, Chris. Hopefully you're doing well, brother.
I am doing well. I get to hear someone talk about FF6 for 10 minutes or so, which is always a highlight, and especially when it's you. Smile, pride you.
Oh, swoon.
Yeah, right. We'll go through teams. Is there any team you want to be on?
Tomberry. Tomberry was the first team I was on, and that always just felt like home.
All right. So we have Dino Atari on Team Mog.
Damn it!
Dare is on Choco, and Nightshade ends up being on Tonberry. We've all just heard that Dine is very excited to be on Team Mog, so I can't wait for him to represent them proudly.
I'm there 30%, maybe 35.
You know what? I'll take that. Anyway, Final Fantasy VI. I hear you know a little bit about it. What you've done both Pixel Remaster and SNES. What are the differences between the two?
The Pixel Remaster, especially in the last year and a half, is really starting to become its own route, which is really nice. Zone Seek is obviously out. All the magic leveling up is done with Modwin, which really opens up the route for more rod abuse. Because magic evasion no longer works. we can't just stack a bunch and call it a day. So we really do have to worry about physical attacks. So we do get a couple of extra items for safety. We upgrade a couple of the treasure chests in the Narsh Cave, like the guard ring, to give us protect and shell. The leveling is different. Atma weapon and floating continent are, I would consider them a lot more scarier than SNES, because you're doing, for a large chunk of it, a solo character grind, where enemies you can survive hits with 2 or more party members, but by yourself, especially if you get something like ninjas, if they decide to throw a skein at you, you're loading an autosave. So Uchiha has done a really good job cutting out a lot of the safeties, and just in the last year alone, he's dropped the time by 8 minutes.
Okay, so that is a significant amount, but obviously he's cut, as you just said, a lot of safeties.
Yes.
Does this mean that this run is now considerably scarier than it was?
If you're going for a lower time, yes. Because we do fight enemies that give large amounts of money, you do have the option, especially if you pick up the game, to just grind extra enemies for levels for safety and extra safety items. It's really when you start trying to cut like the 414, 410 route that you need to start kind of giving up these safeties. But for the marathon, I think we're all pretty much going to grind an extra couple of encounters just to, because it sucks to get to Final Kefka, which is now a scripted fight, and if you're down a rod, the whole script just falls apart. So you will be seeing like a little bit of safeties, because no one wants to do tiers more than once.
Okay.
As someone that has had to do tiers multiple times.
I don't know what you mean. I haven't been there for a single run. So you say that Final Kefka is consistent, like all of the tiers, or just the top?
Yes, the top one.
Okay.
Tier, it's weird. Like, tier 1 is kind of a random. Like, you kind of can control him pretty well. As you're seeing here in the video, Dread Gaze is not what you want to see. But because of the access of rods we have, it does make tier 2 go by very, very quick. I wouldn't say it's scripted, but you have a very, very good chance of going through it and keeping your vanish status. Tier 3 is just going to be tier 3. Anyone that's watched the relay the last couple of years knows that tier 3 can just throw a monkey wrench into its plan with casting Merton or W Wind or Doom. You just kind of have to work around that while counting damage in your head. And then Final Kefka is just a victory lap.
So how hard is it to keep track of all of that in real time?
It's quite punishing, PR especially, because with tier 3, you're looking to get him close to a damage threshold, which is, he's got 40,000 HP, and you want to have him sitting around 15 to 12,000 HP left. But Merton damages him for 1,500. So if you happen to miss a Merton cast, and Celis kills with a Blizzaga, there's a good chance you're going into Final Kefka without Celis, your main damage dealer. Or you're potentially going to lose 2 damage dealers if he decides to do his instant death move twice. And there's no clear indication unless like you just have Mog punch him in the face. Because you need to deal actual damage to push the HP threshold. But with trying to do damage control with healing, and then trying to worry about Doom, and then Merton with you dealing damage with Drill or Blizzagas or Blizzaras, it's very easy to miss something, especially if Lady is still alive and they end up using White Wind, which is a healing ability. If you miss one of those, your damage count is out anywhere between 2 to 8,000, and it just, everything can snowball pretty good from there.
Oh, glory. Glory. So, moving on. Pixel Remaster is obviously very different from SNES. Are there any like PR-specific exploits you can do?
There is an exploit with the morph gauge, funny enough, where if you end a battle with auto battle active and the morph gauge at a low amount, you get refunded the morph you spent in that entire battle. It's something the Western runners are kind of struggling with, just because we haven't spent a large amount of time with it, but the Japanese community has really hammered it home, and it's allowed you to abuse Terra's trance ability, which is effectively double damage. So they can use it for... They can allow auto battle to roll for a lot more fights, where we're just a little more cautious with it, because if auto battle rolls for a second longer than it should have, you lose your whole morph gauge, which makes the rest of the game potentially very, very difficult.
I don't know anyone who that could have happened to points at self.
I did it 2 days ago. It sucked. I was like, I'm cutting the ribbon, and it didn't work so well. There's also a weird oddity that happens on the Doom fight, especially, where he'll use an ability called Force Field, and if it's Force Field's holy element, you need to reset the game. There is a small chance when you reset the game, that immunity still stays flagged in memory. So you end up having to do a hard reset of the game, because if you're starting a fight, we mainly damage him with holy element. Well, if that's immune, there's just no way to damage him. But it also means if you get something like a fire immunity, and that glitch persists, even though it is a small amount of chance, tier 3 becomes infinitely easier because he can't really damage you. So
Is
you
this
could have the
something
god fight one day.
Is this something that always happens, or does it just happen sometimes?
I've seen it happen twice in the last 3 weeks of me running this.
Right, so it's quite rare.
Yeah.
Oh, goody.
If we could find a way to abuse it, though, that would be kind of cool. But it's all random at the moment. But it's just a really weird oddity.
Something for next year.
Yep.
Exactly. When you'll still be running 6, right?
Oh, 100%. Just not PR.
Yeah, PR. You all heard him.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
oh, yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yeah. He said PR. He'll keep doing that. Right.
I love PR.
Yeah. See. Yeah. Good job. I'll PayPal you the money later.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Also, I want to just talk about like the differences with level versus stats.
So, in Final Fantasy VI, because the game uses level and stats into the damage formula, having a higher level isn't necessarily the better option. In the PR route, or in the SNES route, sorry, we'll use Zone Seek, which gives you +2 magic on a level up. In the PR, we'll be grabbing Modwin, which gives you +1 magic on a level up, but we'll be gaining 2 extra levels. And we're kind of on that bell curve where about around level 20 to level 25, levels will give you more damage than stats will. So even though we're down magic, we're down about 8 magic, but we're up 2 levels, we end up dealing more damage. And this is kind of where the new route has taken place, where they're finding that nice bell curve where we can get away with lower stats, but also deal close to the same amount of damage we would at a higher level. So last year it was Celis gets grinded to 47, and then it's got cut back down now to 43, which was about 1.5 minutes to about 2.5 minute time save, depending on like how your level grind would go. So, and you're not really losing that much damage overall in the whole fight.
So it is saving time, but also there's that added, well, you said that. You said you're not even losing that much damage.
No. And it's with the extra rods we're affording, it is making up a little bit of that damage we would miss on a couple of fights. So a fight that is a 3-round is now a 4-round. But in the case of like Guardian, a case that was a 10-round fight is now a 8-round fight. Because we're able to afford more rods to be able to use them on the fight, kind of speed it up a little bit. So you're nickel and diming time saves. Like you're gonna save some time in one fight, lose time in another fight. You do lose a little bit of safety because around level 40 you do start getting large chunks of HP per level up. So Celis is missing about 700-800 HP, which is still pretty significant when you only have 2400 to play with. But she's still the big carry and the big powerhouse, even just with normal spells on single target.
It's good to know that Sellers is still carrying as we see her take down Kefka.
I'm waiting next year for when physical Edgar arises again.
I remember that. I'm fine with Sellers popping off. Alrighty, well, thank you so much, Dine, for your explanation. It's always a pleasure to have you. I will boot you out the call once you tell me which Final Fantasy has the best main character.
Bart from Mystic Quest.
I just don't believe him. That's the killer here. You know, if anyone else gave me that answer, I might believe them. I just don't. But I shall write it down anyway. All right. So, fair warning. The next game we're going to be talking about is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So, if you've not played it, now's the time to skedaddle for, 10 minutes. Come back, maybe, get some water. We will be showing footage, which is hopefully not too spoilery. Just general level and one boss, but it's nothing too crazy.
Yeah, it's fairly early.
And with me, I have the Sid. Hello.
Howdy, howdy.
How are you this afternoon?
Good. I was doing some practice, learning some new stuff, and then Nightshade was like, hey, we got commentary, and I'm like, oh, cool. Let's do that.
Of course. Is there any team that you are preferring to be on?
The team that lets me play the game. That's the team I want to be
on. The team that lets you play the game. Okay, well, the team that lets you play the game isn't Team Mog, because that is male model WODB. Big Sid is on Choco, and you get to be on Team Tonberry.
Yes, I can stab myself in the back for instant death. Sounds like a good plan.
All right, well, Tonberry normally seems to be the most sought-out team, if you can imagine. Anyway, first question. It's come up with, once or twice now, and it always gets me excited. Some of the runners are doing different routes. How big are the differences between the routes? How different will the fights look as a result?
So, some of the fights I kind of had to engineer my own strats, because they're a lot harder than you would think. It definitely is a high skill ceiling game. Wody, I've talked with him, and he kind of does his own thing, and really isn't too aware of the routes around him. For the most part, I kind of ape Crystal Crown's route and emulate it to the best of my ability. I do realize from talking with Crystal Crown, I've seen Big Sid in his chat, and he's talked about routing with him quite a bit. So I think the way it's going to work is Wody does his own thing. Big Sid is going to be similar to Crystal Crown's route and be doing it well. And mine's going to be similar to Crystal Crown's, except I'm going to be doing it poorly.
I'm sure you'll do fine, and you're just talking yourself down. You're going to be great.
Hopefully the 3 or 4 years of remake will pay out. I'm not sure, though.
So, on that, how similar is the run to remake? Because remake on certain difficulties was quite challenging, but then easy, even on the easy difficulties, the minutes and seconds of time save were also quite crucial. Is that the same for Rebirth?
So, remake and Rebirth are on the surface the same game, but the team attacks on the guard button give you a humongous source of damage. And in the easy mode, you can face tank through a lot of attacks and still fire them off. But a lot of it will be understanding what the boss's movement is so that you can actually land those. Versus remake, where you just kind of had to slap them with a sword until they died. Or got enough ATB to kill them. I did a lot of New Game Plus hard, so ATB management was less hitting the enemy and more making sure that I loop Skill Master, ATB Assist, ATB Stagger. so that I could just keep getting my ATB over and over again by just keeping the move rotation proper. This, because those team attacks are so high damaging, we use them a lot. And I'm not really sure what the devs were thinking, but they hit like a truck. And not only do they give ATB to the character that's using them, but they also give it to the character that you're teaming with. So if you do an attack with Cloud that has Aerith assist him, they both get like like 2/3 of an ATB. The one big difference is the ATB was 2,000 points in the original game, 1,000. This one, like, to a casual viewer, you won't notice the difference, but it's actually 1,500 and 1,500. So the numbers are very different between the two. Mainly the problem is Remake, you just don't have a lot of options. In this game, I would argue you have too many options.
I guess that's a good thing, though. Like, it presents somewhat of a headache when routing, when there are so many good options and you don't know which one is the best, but having lots of options is a good thing.
Yeah, luckily, adding Bravery, Faith, D Protect, D Shell, and things like that, as well as keeping Berserk, getting that 30% stat bonus from Bravery, Faith, the 30% reduction from D Shell, D Protect, and an additional 30% from Berserk, your numbers can go really high, really fast and easy. So you can hit like a truck as long as the enemy holds still. In some cases, you kind of know that the enemy's going to move if you're paying attention to their patterns and you're knowledgeable about it. But for the most part, you can do a lot of damage really fast and easy. The difficulty curve is kind of like, it goes from new game easy to new game plus hard, I would say, and then new game normal is kind of how it's always worked. You can save quite a bit of time in new game plus, though, by just being able to warp across the map rather than having to walk. So that's why you'll see about an hour difference between new game plus categories and new game categories.
Alright, that's really interesting. Something I want to know, personally, and it's always something I feel I end up asking as soon as like a game is outside of, I guess, my wheelhouse of like a turn-based JRPG, but like, how difficult is something like this game to learn?
I find that the action RPGs speak a lot to me. I really like them. So it obviously is going to depend on your preference. Personally, like, I started with Remake, and I tried to learn 6 and just was never very good at it. But then I pivoted, learned a little bit of 16 when it came out, got about a couple hours in. Then Rebirth came out, and I all in on it, played it casual for several months. Then the Relay was announced after Limit Break, which I'm a staff member at, so like I was busy the whole time. And then I'm like, let's go. And I learned Rebirth, then I learned 16, then I came back to Rebirth. And fortunately, you guys put me on Rebirth, which I really love the game, so it's fun. But learning it does take a little bit of effort, and you got to kind of put time in. Luckily, you can kind of save before everything. The only downside is like this is the big disparity between Remake, Rebirth, and like 16. 16, they just give you 50 save slots, so you can do it all in one file for the most part. Rebirth, you end up having to like speed run it a few times and get like 4 or 5 profiles to learn everything. But there's some leeway. You can definitely take some slower strats and kind of be more innovative. Like there's a couple of later bosses that I'm not going to name for spoiler's sake, but they're very difficult and a lot of runners messed them up. And I just ended up like reworking the strat so that there was a way that I could do it consistently. And it's a matter of like looking at what people do and kind of piecing together why it works, and then going, well, that doesn't work for me. How can I make it work for me? And kind of doing that. Knowing how to do action games and applying the different options you have, and knowing like the bonus damage is super important from like Berserk and Braver will always end up changing the way that you route.
All right. Well, it's very interesting. I always like learning about like, you know, what a learning experience was like for a game so different from me. So thank you very much for being here, Sid. I really appreciate it. And all of these, same way, I'm going to ask you what your favorite main character from a Final Fantasy is.
Yeah, thought about it a lot when you guys asked, and I like went back and forth, and then I realized I was like, it's been the same since remake. It's always Barrett. Old Barrett, I could not care less about, but the rewriting that they did in remake and Rebirth drastically changed my opinion on him to the point where like remake was almost frustrating because Barrett was so bad. They reworked him pretty heavily in Rebirth, so he's a much better character, but his story arc is fantastic, and I cannot wait to see the full conclusion of it in the next game for sure.
All right, thank you very much. A vote for 7 Rebirth specifically. Which is another singular vote for a game. We have 2 games left now for any other game than 7, the original, to win. Up next, we have Final Fantasy I, and I believe I am joined by the wonderful Easily 18.
Yes, you certainly are. Hello.
Hello, hello. How are you this evening?
Not so bad. How's the voice going through the heat?
The voice is going all right. The voice is going all right. The break definitely helped, as it turns out. Who'd have thought?
Yeah, wonderful how that works.
Yeah, I should have considered doing that beforehand. Is there any team you fancy yourself ending up on?
I would love to be part of Team Mog this year, actually. I was Team Choco last year, and that suited me for like my emotes purposes, but I always wanted to be Mog.
All right, well, let's see. Easily 18 is on Team Mog.
Oh, let's go.
Artis on Team Choco and Seri on Team Tonberry. Almost everyone has gotten their wish for teams. It's
almost like it's scripted.
It's almost like it's scripted, but all of this is done in advance. It can't be. Alas, here we are. I can't wait for it to be much worse next year. I am very excited.
No one gets what they want next year.
So, anyway, talk to me a little bit about FF1. It is, in itself, like a very simple enough game from the outside. The very first entry to the Final Fantasy series. But obviously, it's a speed run. There are always going to be requirements that make it less simple. Can you tell me about some of the guild and level requirements needed?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you say, the run itself is a very, very basic run. The terms of the requirements needed, there's not a dramatic amount in terms of guild and level requirements, but there are some very specific ones. In particular, you're looking at, you want to be level 4 by the time you get to Provoker, simply so that your fighter, or warrior as the Pixel Remaster would put it down as, can one-shot the pirates, which massively helps in terms of making sure nobody dies in that fight, which, whilst not a problem, is time loss. And then the next points you're looking at are, you need to be ideally level 12 by the time you reach Vampire in the Earthen Cave. And that's purely so that you have your Firaga cast, which means that, for one, Vampire has the potential to one-shot a party member, and having Firaga, you one-turn him. So it makes it a lot more simple. The next level requirement is at Lich, where you ideally want to be level 15. And the reason for that is 3 Firaga casts, because Lich is a very treacherous fight, to say the least. He can very much cause you to reset for 5+ minutes without any hesitation, which is one of the real problems with the run in terms of RNG. Aside from that, you have some guild requirements by the time you get to Elfheim, which is really early on, where you want to make sure you can buy one Thundara charge and make sure you have plenty of potions and some antidotes. And then the next real one is by the time you get to Crescent Lake, where ideally you want to be looking at about 32,000 gil upon entry, simply so that you can heal and spend roughly 6,000 on items, and then 2 Thundaga casts, which cost you 26,000 gil, which is quite a hefty amount. That aside, the only real other level requirement you're looking at is level 20. You're keeping an eye on that because your mages get their final int bonus of the run, which you need before the time you reach Kraken, because Kraken is a 6th Thundaga fight, but if you don't have int, it is a lot more.
A lot more.
Yeah, it equates to being an additional 2 turns, roughly, depending on how many charges you will end up needing. So it's one of those, make sure you are not unlucky enough to be stuck with.
So you also mentioned that, like, you know, you need these for certain bosses. Will you ever get to that point in the run and the requirement isn't met? And, like, if so, do you just run around in circles outside trying to kill things trying to get to that point, or do you just go on anyway?
Okay, so the Walk to Provoker, you kind of take what you get. So you do Pirates if you're level 3, do it if you're level 4. But when you get to Vampire, now I have a very, very common track record of being level 11 at Vampire and level 14 at Lich. And I do the fights anyway. They're slightly slower, slightly more risky, but they're definitely possible.
Right.
The risk comes into the fact that instead of you using a single 2 Firagas on Vampire, you end up using 4 Thundaras, which is fine, but it's definitely not the ideal scenario. And for Lich, if you're really, really lucky, you will end up with your early int bonus, which means that you will hit enough damage with Firaga to do it in the same number of turns as if you were 15. But if you're unlucky, you will not, and it will take you approximately 4 Firagas and about another 4 Thundaras. You may even run out of Thundara charges by this point. So you end up having to use Thunder. Very slow, very risky.
Okay, so the TLDR of this is just, you know, get luckier. Be more skilled in how the luck is given to you.
If anyone didn't know, Final Fantasy I is Final Fantasy Chaos with RNG applied. That's I guess the most simple way of explaining one.
as it always is. Also, if you've been paying attention to the video so far, you've seen, like, you know, the little fast forward button in the top left. That means auto battle. For the Pixel remasters, auto battle is really optimal if you, like, use it a lot. Why is it so optimal? Why do you need to, like, get on top of it as soon as you start learning it?
So there's 2 real reasons. The first one is that it takes the effort of having to constantly change your abilities and make sure you're selecting what you need, and says don't need that. And the other option is that it also speeds up the battle. A very common misconception for people who don't run the game is actually that it doesn't do anything specific, but it actually makes the fights roughly twice as fast, which obviously when you take way over 100 encounters, it adds up very quickly. And a little slight nuance that's quite easily forgotten: if you get a preempt or an ambush, it actually skips the dialogue time where it says preempt or ambush slightly, and you end up being about 2 or 3 seconds faster just on the initial entry to fight.
That is a long time, even just for one encounter. 2 or 3 seconds every time you get a preemptive or an ambush.
Yes, absolutely. It's a lot more than I think most people realize, but it's something that I've been really paying attention to recently, and it's if anyone wants to ever learn Final Fantasy I, get used to knowing how to toggle your auto battle as quick as you see the encounter, because it's key.
And then also in FF1, as far as I'm aware, stat growth is random. How important is it to get, like, really good stats towards it? Can you just show up to the final boss and, oh, unlucky, I have 80 less HP than I normally do, this is going to be miserable?
You can do it, but it's miserable.
Yeah.
So what we're looking for is to ideally get certain health points, one of which is you want to realistically have, by Chaos, 240 health on each of your mages, your black mages, and 300 on your monk as a minimum. It doesn't always happen that way. And one of the reasons is that if you can survive getting typhooned or tsunami'd, it makes the fight much easier. Regardless, you're gonna die to a first turn flare, but that's what the reset's for. But if you're really unfortunate, like I was in just my last run, I had 182 health on one of my black mages by the time I got to Chaos, and I had spent time over leveling. I was about 3 levels higher than normal, and he just refused to gain health.
So it can feasibly happen.
Yes, it happens a lot more than I would like to admit.
I guess FF1 is always going to FF1 no matter what you do.
Well, I mean, there is a very common knowledge across speedrunners that have seen Chaos will be Chaos, in the fact that we've all seen Chaos keeps a speedrunner there for 10 plus minutes. I took safe strategies for a couple of runs, and it still took a good 3 or 4 tries on more than one occasion. He's such a difficulty spike and an RNG spike. It's an unreal difference.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you very much, Easley. I appreciate having your time.
No, I appreciate being brought in. Thank you.
For the last question, I've been very wrong with who people or what game people have guessed for which main character, which Final Fantasy has the best main character.
You're going to be wrong about mine, I think.
Oh no! Okay, well, I mean, obviously, I thought it was going to be FF9. That's how we met, right? Obviously, it's not. So go on then, hit me. What Final Fantasy has the best main character?
Final Fantasy IV, Cecil.
Final Fantasy IV, Cecil. That's the second vote for FF4. It could still tie FF7, but as it stands, FF7 is still winning. 3-2 and then 1-1-1-1-1. A bajillion ones for everything else. Last, but certainly not least, we have Final Fantasy VIII. And with me, I have Sayo. Hello, hello.
G'day, Chris. Good morning, everyone. Oh, good morning. It's Australia where I am, so it counts as good morning.
It counts as good morning. I've tried to address everyone by their relevant time zone. Right. Is there any team that you want to land on?
Chris, it's not going to matter because whatever team I'm on is going to end up with the most talented, the fastest, the nicest menuing runners that you'll ever see in your entire life. I will be on the winning team, Chris.
I'm excited to see which team is going to win. The Brutals is on Team Mog. Team Choco, the apparent victors. Their participant is Sayo. And Cordelium is on Team Tonbury. So how is it now knowing that Team Choco are going to win? Are you excited?
Look, we didn't pull it out last time. We barely lost in a close nail biter, if I remember correctly, last year. But this year will be different. I'm excited to be back on Team Chocobo.
Fantastic. So other things you can be excited to tell me about. Final Fantasy VIII.
Always.
Battles are very quick in Final Fantasy VIII. They're like over, sometimes in the blink of an eye. Why is that, and how much goes into getting there?
So it's a bit of a two-parter. The game naturally has an incredibly fast ATB system. The bars just fill up so quick. I bounce back and forth between Final Fantasy VIII and 9 quite a bit, and 9 is excruciatingly slow after I've played Final Fantasy VIII for a bit. So beyond just the fact that the battles are progressing incredibly quickly, it's also just the way that you get stronger in that game. So like the junction system and whatnot, basically, rather than having MP to cast spells and whatnot, you gather quantities of spells and then align those spells to stats. So you don't get a better weapon to buff your strength and better armor to buff your defense. You get 100 demis and put demis onto strength, is as best I can describe it in the time limit that we have. So basically you're keeping your level incredibly low, but your stat line incredibly high. we try and get as little XP as possible. So that's basically a two-parter. Part one is the fact that the battles themselves just move incredibly quickly, and that your team is incredibly beefy from the very early point in the game. So you get 1 or 2 turn battles tops outside of a few bosses.
All right. So also there are varying routes this year that are, I mean, in some regards, very different, right? What are the differences between them? Advantages, disadvantages, that kind of thing.
So routes in Final Fantasy VIII will be defined by 2 things. What rare cards you get, because cards are crafted into very powerful items that help you, create those very fast battles. So what cards you get, and whether or not you fight XATM, the big machine, Spider, and Dollet. So Connor is going for the Q-only route, which is a route from like 8 years ago. Basically, he will only be getting the Quistis card, which gives him Samantha Souls, which are refined into triples. Very strong magic that you can junction onto your party very early. However, he will not be getting what I get, which is the Zell card as well, which gives you strength plus 60 bonuses to attach onto your characters. So Connor's going to run into some issues with damage later on. Against certain enemies, he's going to have to pull the trigger as Squall, with his gunblade and whatnot, where I don't have to, which saves a few frames for me. He's also going to need to get, some extra items and whatnot to help him keep up with damage. It's a slower route, but it's a little bit more consistent. And as I said, for me, I'll be getting the Zell card, so I won't be running into those damage issues. I'll have plenty of damage for the whole run, but I will not be fighting the Spider and Dollet. I'll be running past that and fighting Diablos with Zell. Brutals will be doing ECM, which is sort of the more modern route. It is a little bit slower than my route. However, it's way more consistent and only about 30-40 seconds slower if you look at the averages. So he'll be having an incredibly technical fight against the Spider to be meeting certain damage thresholds and whatnot. But he'll get a massive boost in AP and unlock a lot of essential items and abilities rather really, really early, where I won't get that stuff so early.
So we're doing it on PSX this year.
Yes, the best platform.
In some people's eyes, absolutely. In PC, ECM is faster. Why is it not faster on PSX?
So pretty much it all comes down to the battles. In PC, they are locked at 15 frames a second, whereas on console, your menus are still at 60 frames per second in battle. So you can punch out, your attacks and whatnot incredibly quick, but on PC, it's just less so. The big one is Diablos. So if you are not doing ECM, when you fight Diablos, you take Zell and you duel Diablos to death. Duel is, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a character in Final Fantasy VI that's got a really similar system, where basically you can chain together these combos that sort of look like something out of a fighting game, where it's like down, up, circle, right, X. And left, right, circle. Yes, that's the one. So doing that on PC with 15 frames per second menus is going to be really, really difficult. But when you've got 60 FPS menus and the analog stick to cheese certain inputs, you can actually you can fight Diablos with duel. You don't need to fight the Spider. In PC, you kind of need to fight the Spider to give yourself that advantage in battles.
Okay. I genuinely don't think I knew that. I thought I did, but you've given me your answer and I don't think I did.
You can't, if you do QZ on PC or the HD version, if you go into Diablos and you get a 4-second duel, you actually can't kill him. You literally don't have enough time.
Oh, interesting. Well, the more you learn. Also, something I wanted to know. You said that Cordelium is using a route from, 8 years ago or anything, but it's more consistent. I take it this is a Q-only route, but it doesn't do Cerberus.
I don't believe it will do Cerberus. No, just in watching Connor's practice streams and whatnot, I don't think I've seen him go near Cerberus. So we will all be doing the highly technical Cerberus skip of holding down left.
Okay. I've definitely read like the FF8 wiki for Cerberus skip, and it makes it look a lot harder than that, than just like down left. Are you sure it's that simple?
Sorry. Yes. Yeah. Basically, we're going to be doing a lot of frame perfect. I think there's 18 frame perfect inputs chained together.
Yeah.
I actually want to be sure. Are we being ironic, or are we?
No. This is Cerberus skip. You do 18 perfect frame inputs.
Okay. Yes.
And you
Okay,
have to
I'm on
go
the same
around
page
it
now.
several times.
Yes, so basically if you hold, well, it could be just boiled down to holding down left. If you, hold down left for a frame or two too long, there's a 2-minute boss fight that you're locked into. The PlayStation disc tray will in some cases open and shoot the disc out at you. That is one of Cerberus's attacks.
Yeah.
So we want to avoid that.
Yeah. I mean, this is why FF8 runners wear helmets, just for that fight.
Yes, though, let's go with that reason.
Yeah. Luckily, Cerberus has been phased out, so like nowadays you won't see a lot of the
Yes,
runners do
yeah,
that.
thank goodness.
But it used to be. You can go back to most old VODs and see like just a full-on protective helmet and a shield, just in case.
The old Modern Warfare 2 riot shield is what I've opted for.
Yeah, I can understand why. It's a vicious attack. All right, well, I appreciate you being here, Sire. You've woken up quite early to be here, so I appreciate
No,
it.
so I'm going to go and get ready for work now.
Oh boy. Okay, well, I will end this how I've ended them all. There is a tie, although I suspect you're not going to tie it. Which Final Fantasy has the best main character?
10 or 16. Goodbye, everyone.
Okay, I guess 10 or 16 will get half a vote? So, one half, and then he said FF16. So, the Final Fantasy with the best main character is Final Fantasy VII. Confirmed, we've done science, followed by FF4, and then just like a bajillion games have one vote. A bajillion. FF6 didn't get a vote, but luckily for me, I'm the host. I'm going to tell you all that it did and lie to your faces. So, nice. Anyway, we are now done. That is the entire pre-show. You can get your screenshots in. I think we'll post this image somewhere else as well after the end of this. But these are the complete teams. I hope everyone has enjoyed being here. I hope you've all had fun. I hope you've all learned something. There is also a certain 6-letter named human being in the call with me who is going to wrap us up.
Just thought I'd hop in and say thanks. Thank you, Chris, for hosting and talking so much for the past 3.5 hours. Big round of applause. Woo-hoo.
Round of applause to you as well. I guess like a lot of people probably don't know that basically we both put a fair bit of work into the pre-show, but Seraph does all the hard stuff, and then I come up with a vague sense of charisma and willingness to talk and come take all the credit. So, round of applause for Seraph as well.
Oh, it's a team effort. But yeah, as you said, these are the teams. So feel free to screenshot this, share it, save the date, get the date in your calendar, write it down, put it on your fridge. I don't care. 16th is this Friday, and we'll be back, same place. So we'll see you then. Thanks everybody for coming and hanging out. Thanks to everyone that was interviewed, I guess, on the pre-show. Thanks for everyone that joined and participated.
Yeah, I would also like to reiterate that. Thank you to everyone who's being on here. It was a genuine delight. Everyone was wonderful. Everyone was lovely. I learned lots of things. Everyone was insightful. I now have something to print out and put on my fridge, apparently, so I'm excited for that.
All right, see you later. See you on Friday.
See you later, everyone. Bye-bye.